Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Majors Series, and welcome to Petit Le Mans. My name's Stephen Koenig. Joining me in the box today is Nicholas Hilbrand, and out on the cameras is Daniel Costello, as we're going to be having a bit of fun around a very tight circuit. Nicholas, this is going to be great. A Petit Le Mans around the beautiful circuit of Road Atlanta that was opened up on 13th of September 1970, 4 kilometers long, 12 turns, and ultimately tests the drivers in high-speed and low-speed multi-class action.
Hello there, Stephen. Yes, always great to be back here in Braselton, Georgia. As we can see here, it opened on 13th September, as you already said as well. So we're just under a week away from the 55th anniversary of this wonderful circuit opening. 4.08 kilometers, 12 corners, and, well, definitely one of the most iconic road racing circuits in North America.
And it's also going to be only round 9 of the Majors Series as we get closer and closer to the end. It's a 2-hour solo race. The drivers have to compete LDMH, LMP2, and GT3 with a drive-through at 20 incident points, additional drive-through every 10. So be careful with those off tracks, especially coming out of the final sector, and one spare car if you make a mistake, and you really don't want to be using that spare car during the course of this race. The track is sort of warm to deal with, but let's take a look at how our grid as the cars are starting to line up, Nicholas. I gotta say, really looking forward to this race as the times have been extremely quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, around this circuit as well, with multi-class, especially this wonderful SS section that we see, the downhill here that is too steep to show properly. It's going to be tight. First row, Oscar Fredriksson and Richard Kumlin. The second row, we have Aldous Puteklis and Michael Hesse. Then Seba Cornes and Gary Thomas in row 3. Sebastian Jackson in row 4, joined by Colby Buck and Pedro Diaz and Roberto De Felipes in the 5th row.
Falling down from there, that is our GDP class. We also take a look to row 6 with Fibra rounding it out, not able to put a time on the board for the GTPs. We're going to be moving on to our Dallara P217s, and that's where it starts heating up with Michael Haverdelfilson in first, Matthew Crisp in second, Garen Baton, who is in third. This is going to be his last time getting to have a bit of a go in the Dallara. He's got Alex Crow lining up, Byron Kutzer all the way out from South Africa, Daniel Holmer, Jaco van der Plaat, Oscar Mutten, Reino Foxe Reser, and Ray Partridge rounding out row 5 in the Dallara, the LMP2s.
And next up,
heading over to
oh, sorry.
Over to you.
Just, yeah, quickly stumbling over each other a little bit. Will happen in the race as well with the drivers here. Row 6, Wayne Hutchinson, Jeff Schmeier. Then row 7, we have Lawrence Verbeek and Devon Allies. Then in row 8 on 15th and 16th, we have Chris Savalich and Brian Scrivener. And in row 9 in 17th place, we have Eric Scherer.
Oh, great to see a strong contention. Now, GT3's not this strong as it has been all season. We got David Baker in first place with Stephen Verwain in second. Trevor Vorosky down in third. Fourth place is Darren Shrupels, along with Christopher Brockner. Noah Kelly in sixth. Seventh place is Jacob Kafak, along with Daniel in 8th, 9th, Janneman Price from Team Heap Together, and 10th place, Hakan Shoot, going and fighting it out on the bottom row there.
Row 6, Cameron de Bastos is joined by Marcel Ritter in 11th and 12th. Then Stephen Saunders and Jaco Grobler, sorry, in row 7th. And then finally rounding out the field in the GT3 class, Michael Hogg and Alexander Lechner.
Always great to see our drivers fighting out. GT3s not as strong as our GTPs and LMP2s this time around. However, we're gonna see a fight heading into T1. Cold tires, cold brakes, and as we know with the GDPs, a lot of easy walking. The LMP2s are going to give them a little bit of breathing room just for the cars to get going, and our GD3s as well. I've got to say, I'm keeping a very close eye on the LMP2s, running some seriously quick times during the practice session, and our GT3s have been 0.1 to 0.5 of a second from our top 10 during practice. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to be fighting out towards the sharp end of the order. But with this getting closer to the end of the championship, Nicholas, the likes of Jasper Eriksson, who leads out the championship, Trevor Vorosky is in third, Garen is lying in third place. I mean, this is a tight fight for the championship, and it's coming down to round 9 here around Road Atlanta for the Petit Le Mans. So it's over the hill they go. The pace car will dive to the inside line and dive into the pits as our GTPs will get ready to go under green, and green flag we go as the drivers put the hammer down and make their way into turn 1. It's going to be side by side and gentle through. No aggressive overtakes as yet, but we do see a couple of drivers nailing off into the dirt. Here comes our LMP2s after their start, and not too far behind will be our GD3s. They're going to have a bit of an easier time to catch up to the likes of Philippes. Down in 10th of our GDPs, it's Huffle Davidson out in first place, but it's Becker who takes the top spot at the moment for the GD3s off the start, and it's going to be a chase down with the likes of Ferwan in that second place Ford Mustang. Trying to put the hammer down a little bit earlier, but it's the Acuras leading out the charge at the moment for the sharp end of the field.
Yeah, Seba Connes trying to find a way past the Acura in front of him. Of course, very, very different engine specifications here. They're all built to the same regulations. But the wonderful part about these LMDH cars is that the LMDHs are built based on LMP2 car chassis. They built their own engines, but they have a stock, a spec hybrid system that goes across all these cars, except for the Ferrari over there, because that is built to LMH spec. So a hypercar from Europe, and yeah, without going too deep into all of the details here, Fabio Braga is trying to find his way back past the LMP2s after an early mistake.
Now the difficulty comes in trying to break away. He's got the power to do so, but unfortunately in cornering, the LMP2s are quite close. But take a look at the fight for fourth place. Darren trying to hold the inside line, making sure that it's going to be a hard-working buy as Mercedes really keeps on that. Sorry, that isn't Darren, that was Garrett. But it's Daniel Pierce down in 7th place in the BMW, hoping to find out with the Porsches. Question comes in, Nicholas, how hard do you want to push on the start of the race, especially for a 2-hour solo enduro? This is a lot of hard work on the drivers, many of them going and worrying about the fatigue that they build up after the first half an hour. Now they've got to try and keep going for 2 hours. And this is for championship points. You do have a variety of drivers that are not in the championship. They are just joining in for this race. They won't be scoring points, but they can set you on your back foot.
I mean, the difficult part around this is that it is always a double-edged sword with making moves early on in the race. You are closest overall as a field in these situations. So if you messed up qualifying, you start the race further back, you want to try and get as much of a move on as possible. You want to try and be aggressive and, just try to get as many overtakes in as long as everyone's still close together. At the same time, the more you fight, the more you leave yourself open to be attacked as well. And especially if you just overdrive a little bit too much early on already, you can mess up your tires. You can pretty much also, the more cars are around you, you have a higher risk of bigger accidents. Just one little mistake, one spin, and very, very quickly, you can have a mass pile up there. So the race can be over just as quickly. And that's something that's, as a driver in this situation, you see more the chance, the opportunity of what you can do at the start. And a lot of people just, misjudge the risk of, what could this move do if I mess this up? And, I still have 2 hours left to go anyway, 1 hour and 56 minutes. So there's plenty of moves still to be made around here, especially in traffic, which will play a very big factor later on.
As we will take a look at Matthew Crisp going and really fighting out. The GTP is not running away as much as they would like from the LMP2s. Alex Crow fighting for third place, side by side. Beautiful go with Garen right next to him. The two of them not backing out of the fight. Garen hoping to hold the inside through the final corner, had to back out. Alex Crow up into third, but it is a brawl. Third, fourth, fifth, all amongst each other. Alex trying to break away as quick as he can as Garen quickly goes for the deep end on the inside, making sure he's going to hold the line as much as possible. But Alex wants to try and break this toe as fast as he can before getting to that back straight. Oscar now also trying to sweep through the S's to get a little bit of a climb out of that 7th place spot. There's not a lot of room to play around in the LMP2 field. You've got to keep consistent. You want to be in that slipstream the whole time. The moment that you break away from the train means that you're in for a world of hurt, and all these drivers know very well as they go down the gears into second through that right-hander and flat on the gas, some of them lighting up those rear wheels and hoping to just utilize zero downforce on these cars, especially for this long straight. You want that extra 15 kilometers that can be lost during the course of the run. And also, any damage now means that you're going to be picking up a little bit more fuel usage than you have to plan. And for the likes of our GT3s, that is not an option, as otherwise you'll be thrown straight into traffic the moment that you come out of the pits, and you want to try and be a little bit off-center from the rest of the drivers. A bit of a different strategy coming into play. Stephen Verwen, lying in second place in the Mustang, got some serious straight line speed, fighting against one of the meta straight line cars, McLaren of Baker. Going side by side, under braking a late lunge, gets it done, and well done. Stephen now opens up a slight gap, but talk about having the faith in the brakes there.
Completely without fear, the Mustang roars past there. Well, you know, McLaren has a 4-liter twin-turbo V8, but the Mustang is a 5-liter naturally aspirated V8, and you know what they usually say? There's no replacement for displacement.
Well, that's certain. I've got to say, this is also quite an entertaining one, because this is just before we're getting the new update coming to iRacing, and we're going to see another front-engine car being brought in, the Aston Martin. But taking a look at how our GTP is starting to slice their way through the GT3s, this is always one of the more stressful moments, and Richard's starting to feel that as he wants to try and make his way through, he's under a fair amount of pressure to get the moves done and dusted quite quickly. However, he doesn't want to be swallowed up behind any back markers that may cost him time, especially with that big Cadillac chasing him down in 4th place. You can see the sweep on the inside, just trying to get around the GT3s, not wanting to lose too much time at the top end of the circuit as they make their way through. But there's always that little bit of nervous coming in as Jaco Krobler and the likes of Jelleman Price are going to be getting it in the Mercedes as they stuck in their own little fight, and now having the GTP slicing through, stopping them from utilizing that inside line, and we'll have to wait out on the dirty stuff. So always a tough one out there, that's for certain, Nico.
Absolutely, and you know, you can see the speed differences with these cars. Around 300 kilos less, a lot more downforce and quite a bit more power, as they're now making their way into turn 1, trying to find their way around the Mercedes there as well, and now heading into the SS. So it's going to be even more tight. You have to find the gap, you have to make the move when you can make it, and hope that the GTs will also work with you there, because they also have to stick to their lines. You know, they have less mechanical and less aerodynamic grip, so they can't really throw the car around as much as the GTPs in comparison. Right, I have to head out now. Well, the person that I was jumping in for has finally approached, the great Jake Sperry. And yeah, so I'll leave you in the capable hands of him now.
Well, thank you very much, Nicholas, and going and being part of it. Jake, welcome to the commentary box, and welcome to Petit Le Mans.
Well, thank you very much. A very Petit Le Mans with 2.4 hours in terms of the time taken then as far as racing will go. And when it comes to major series, it is all about finding every single level to be up at the pointy end. We have been keeping our eyes focused on where the front of this field has been trying to sort itself out, but I would say without any shadow of a doubt, it's about having these three categories control by about a second over Matthew Crisp, and Stephen Vavaya having Trevor Vavrovsky for a little bit of company.
Well, it's going to be an interesting race indeed, and it's going to be a long one for the drivers as they have to try and fight their way through. Now, Jake, you have been around the sim racing scene, especially for endurance racing, for quite some time. Multi-class action, a very tight and technical circuit is going to be the one to keep an eye out for. What is going to be the main ideas in terms of strategy that you've seen work to perfection here, other than what I've seen of just go as long as you can in the race?
Well, I would say at this point that as long as you can is the way that the race is going to need to pull out, as we watch Daniel Holmer here on screen looking to hunt down parts of SimRace Sweden, and now looking to try and get this one against Garrett Batten then for place. So Garrett now looking to hold himself steady, looking to bring himself to that closer position to say this is what it is capable and it is all about. But again, at 10A and 10B, the prime place to get it done, it is not quite in a position. So I would look at strategy and say 2 as long as possible is the best way to get it done. The only other alternative is to get your short stop out of the way and to jump up and make things early. So I would put the question then back at your feet, Stephen, and say if you're in the middle of the pack, are you wanting to make a stop early, give yourself no margin for error late on, or are you looking at this saying, well, I'm going to try and navigate through the traffic, I'm going to go to my hour, and I'm going to go the long way all the way to the end of the race?
If I ever get to the middle of the pack one day the gods will be so thankful for me to get there. But honestly, I would have to wait until the end of the stint. Rather go to the fuel lights and try and push a little bit harder, especially early stages of the race, knowing that there's mistakes that can happen. Try and utilize it. I would think of the second stop being the shorter of the stops, and then focus on there from the hour to move forward. But that being said, it depends on the class. For a lot of the GT3 cars, I know with the teammates, we've been trying to work out what's going to be the plan here. 2 stops seems to be for the GT3s. However, you can get it to 1.5 stops. So you can do a short stop in the first to try and get rid of some of the traffic, and then do a long stop on your second to try and help you out. That seems to be the go-ahead strategy that was being utilized in practice. However, for Michael Hogg, who's been really fighting out there, the strategy of going the extra mile, go long, has worked out all season long for him. Oscar Fredrickson, he's been having a good time out, and also been really stretching open the gap. I mean, 5 seconds to Patulkas. I mean, that is not an easy feat to do alone, and he still wants to try and make that gap work in his favor. In this sort of antic, you want to run long. You want to push that gap. At least then you can have a bit of a sort out, especially if you're needing to go and change tires, which that's going to be the next one. Like, yeah, Jake, we've seen tires work in people's favor, but with the new tire model on all 3 of these cars, do you really want to change the tires at the start of the race?
Well, it's about giving yourself comfort, and if you're having to make that stop early, then it's certainly not going to be there. It is a day of destiny for many. Acuras then 1 and 2 in category, with the Cadillac finding itself in 3rd, and then the Acura of Richard Cumlin then in 4th position out there as it goes. Daniel Holmer's continuing to shadow and stay close here as we sit with an hour 47 remaining in terms of racing action. So it's a full 2 hours that they've got on the clock here on this Petit Le Mans. And in comes Fabio Braga then in the 414 to make a pit stop, a little bit out of sequence compared to a lot of the other cars around, and losing a lot of time. So that indicates to me he's had an issue on track, and he has done, because he has actually come together with Cameron De Bastos, the 636.
Oh, up against the McLaren, that's going to take a bit of a hurt. And oh man, I won't lie, a little bit of my heart is out there on the track at the moment to see the teammates, but it's still not what you want to be having. The LMP2s, the damage model, can be quite harmful, especially if the lightest of contacts. I mean, these cars are very sensitive to their aero. A little knock can cause you into big trouble, especially if you're turning. Believe it or not, if you're turning left and right and you clip that front suspension against a wall or against another car, that's going to bend your steering and make life rather miserable for a long drive. and give you the meatball flag. Here is under braking. This is the 406 of Jelleman Price going and having a bit of a difficult time. Oh, turned round by one of our LMP2 cars. That is a bit of damage happening to the back of Jelleman's car, but also LMP2's front end squashed underneath that big 1.1 ton Mercedes rear.
Well, it's tough when you're going through a section like that and you're trying to avoid having a major amount of contact through that section. When you've got so many sort of piling up, one on top of the other, on top of the other, you do sense that there are troubles, and there have been changes as we saw Daniel Holmer hold that 4th place. He's through because Garrett Batten is now down to 6th. Oscar Motan then in the 4:11 jumps up, and Fabio Braga, by the way, has left pits with a speeding penalty. He's got a black flag.
Oh boy, not what you want to have on the start of the race. I mean, we're not too far into this race and already getting a penalty. Every 10 after this means that you've got to drive through. Alexander, oh, just a slide. There's the impact. That's a 4X, and that is a BMW, a bit second-hand, unfortunately. Not the way an M4 is meant to be.
Casper Brockner then in 4th position, really trying to figure out a way to the podium as Crow and now the likes of Holmer work their way through. Disrupts the battle at turn 3, so easy to find that in play as Crow now watches around. Darren Sharpless in that 3rd position, and look at the way that Sharpless dictates the traffic out there. I think that's really important to note. The slowest category of car dictates where the quicker category of car could go and pass them, not the other way around.
That's the one thing you're gonna have to do. It's not being a bully tactic. You just got to stand your ground. The others have got plenty of power and power to weight ratio to beat you. So all that you need to do is just hold your line. Don't jump out of the way. Be predictable and make it work in your favor. However, when you're getting swamped the way he is, he's actually losing time and needs to also figure out where he can pick up the pace. Daniel Holmer continues the chase in 4th place and wants to try and make it work out in his favor. Crow opening up that gap little by little, the traffic working in Crow's favor. However, Daniel needs to try and get a little bit closer to that rear wing, especially coming off turn 3, turn 4, and working down the S's. You want to be right up against the rear of the car as they now try to battle their way through. That would be Jaco Grobler, that they dive around the outside and get onto the pace. Oof, a little bit stuck. Alex now needing to try and figure out how to get past. Daniel Holmer in a perfect lunge. He can try and box in to get this 3rd place. It's going to be hard on the gas on the exit. Unfortunately, not close enough to make it work out in his favor.
No, so that there for Trevor Vavrovsky is perfect placing, and for Vajan, that's going to be close, going through then the next section, and so he holds his ground and gets himself what he wants, but Motan and Batten were there. The issues there were with Jannem and Pruis then trying to get through then in that last section, because Pruis has dropped a little bit of time and now is a full lap down on your overall leaders, but Daniel Holmer now has dropped a little bit of time out, and I think Vavrovsky now will be the one to keep an eye out on your overall lead in GT3, because of the way that they've got to try and figure out 10A and 10B. Now you can sit down and pretty much sit behind someone. It's about playing the long game, and so you're going to start thinking about fuel. Pedro Diaz now 4th in your GTP category, your prototypes, looking at Seba Cornes for that place, and Seba here from Uruguay is now holding himself steady at the moment. Pedro in the 4-1-2 machine from Portugal is now thinking about what can you do. Brockner close again for a podium spot, again not quite there in the AMG Mercedes.
Now the ODC machines running in tow, but interesting to see. Good mix of cars, mainly going towards the McLaren and the Mercedes, having the more power down the straights. A little bit busy heading up towards the top, however, as Jaco van der Plat now having to really go late on the brakes, trying to keep it together. Remember, the LMP2s don't have ABS. They can lock up and have a bit of a problem. Pedro Diaz out there on the Cadillac, right underneath the rear wing, trying to see where he can get on by. He's also got a little bit of discomfort behind him as he holds on 4th place, aiming for 3rd, but 5th place is right on his tail.
very much in a case of these three together. So 20 minutes in, Oscar Fredriksson leads Aldis Putekelis with Seba Cornes in third position. Michael Hafler-Darson leads Matthew Crisp, leads Alex Crow, and then Stefan Vavayan, Trevor Vavrosky and Darren Sharple as your top three. Pedro Diaz hoping to stay very much close in on this top category, work a drive on in and say, what can I do? Past Lawrence Verbate, then making that run through, and Richard Cumlin will follow in tow as they work around 112 over that lap, and finally a reprieve, a tiny reprieve from the traffic before the next group starts to bring themselves up again. And this is what you find. This is a bull ring of a circuit. Yes, it's 4.1 kilometers in terms of length out here on circuit, but when you sit down and you really put it into perspective on what makes this racing so great, Stephen, it's the case that traffic is always ever present.
That's it. It's always a difficult circuit to work your way around. You have to balance, and also setup. You've got so many variety. A lot of people going for medium aero, trying to work their way through the corners, especially through the first sector. Others going for less aero for this back straight, where you can gain an extra 15 kilometers to try and power your way through. That also comes into contention. No one really having a permanent advantage over each of the competitors, and it's also a circuit that's gonna wear you down. You have to keep your eyes on the mirrors, you have to keep your eyes on the relative, and keep your eyes on the front windscreen. You just got to put your head on a 360 swivel and work your way through of how this race is going to turn out. Whatever plan you had at the start of the race, throw it away. You're going to plan Z1, whatever it can be. You've done with plan B, plan C, plan D by the end of the race. And especially in a 2 hour, you're going to be definitely sweating and fighting for it at the moment. But we do have Daniel.
That is Daniel Pais across the circuit there and struggling to stay out of the way of many a driver, and then dragging back on that grass onto circuit there. The Portuguese driver Pais in trouble, and it so easily happens up through that section of circuit, struggling across the middle of the road. No mechanical flag there for him.
No, just going and missing a brake marker by a meter. But take a look how busy this is getting, Jake. A bit of a try and maneuver your way through. GTP, LMP2, and GT3 all trying to find the same piece of road here.
It's tough because you've got drivers like Wayne Hutchinson and Ray Partridge who are in the middle of this. You've got Jeff Schmeier trying to find a pass in this group as well, and Michael Hesse will move on through then in 5th place by the entire group. So it's a case of, can you stand on ceremony and get yourself through? Answer to that is yes, and Pedro Diaz happily holds his place, but Seba Cornes will be looking around at that going, yeah, that's about exactly what I want to try and get through. Everybody has managed to navigate that successfully with no major incident to be thrown into play. There's a look on board with Pedro Diaz, then searching about through the rights of 6 and 7. Two very different corners with very similar profiles on paper.
And you just have to get your gearing right, heading onto this long straight. The moment that you light the wheels up, you lose that little bit of traction, you lose time to your competitors. Got to keep nice and close, and Pedro trying to keep in the slipstream is going to be late braking on the 3rd line and turn into the left hand, into the right, stand on the gas and keep your foot absolutely floored right the way through into the final long right-hander. You could see how squirrely the rear of Pedro's car was as it started to lose that little bit of weight on the rear.
Oh, we've got a spinner, Devon Alley's having a big moment. He's caught Janeman Preuss then around again, who seemingly has been from pillar to post with every incident in the opening 15-25 minutes of this race. But Devon Alley's finding a spin around and then causing issues in that Dallara P217. But Jeff Schmeier continues on in this battle, going on for 11th and 12th. Overall at this point, and Jeff now looking to try and settle back down into rhythm here. Wayne Hutchison, and then in front of them is Colby Buck, who is in 7th place, but for the moment it's Wayne's World just in front then of Jeff Schmeier.
The South Africans having a brawl with one another. Not quite how you want it to go, especially in this race, but still plenty of time on the board to get yourself going. They do have that one fast repair that they can use on these cars to get back out in the race, but you don't want to use it too early in the race. Garen, however, is in a bit of a nightmare situation. He's fighting second in the championship, and he needs to get the climb because second place in our GT3 is Trevor Vorosky, who is right at the top of the board and fighting. Well, Garen's in third on the championship, Trevor's in second, and Jesper Eriksson holds the top of the European standings.
Yeah, so you get the sense that Jesper Eriksson, being not necessarily here today and scrapping about for it, will give options here, but you would really want to start climbing and saying, this is where I can discover. Garen Batten has been there before, he's done it, he's wrote the book on how to get victories in the major series, a series that has been going around for almost a decade now in various forms. Started in the northwest of the United States, over with the likes then of the area of Washington, so sort of the Seattle area. Stephen Vervaeren still holding himself steady then from Canada, as Trevor Vorosky has to only fall into line. It then blossomed out into 4 wonderful championships out there, which came together for one final, and ultimately it's turned back into a way of just shrinking itself back down a little bit. But the European split has been one of a complete fixture for a number of years here in iRacing, and Vervaeren and Vorosky going at it. Trevor Vorosky has been here as one of the longest tenured drivers in all of the major series.
And Stephen is confident on the brakes. You can see the Mustang not putting a foot wrong and just able to get going. And Vorosky, who keeps in the tow, is just trying to pace himself at the moment. Sit in the mirrors, not going for any aggressive overtakes, and is just waiting, biding his time, just for the moment that this Mustang puts a foot wrong. We do know that the Mustangs are a little bit brutal, especially on their front left at this circuit. They will be keeping an eye on it. Stephen will be focusing on the hard charge. However, Vorosky will be dealing with the rears starting to let go on this car as it gets a little bit warmer out on the track. The tires start to get a little bit more worn down. He has to keep that well in mind. So hard pushes at the moment is not on the option for both cars. Hopefully comes down to the pit stop. I'm curious to see who's going to take a fresh set of boots before they head out onto the track again, because that is 30 seconds that can be saved in the pit stop just by doing a short fuel and not taking tires. You can push yourself that little bit more. The GT3's roughly 2 stops needed for this entirety of the race. However, you can play it a little bit clever and try save a bit of fuel, especially in the slipstream.
Well, Vervaeren is doing a good job in the Mustang, but that AMG Mercedes is naturally good through the cadence of its engine, through the gears. It is one of the best cars out there, and that's what makes it so good for a place like this. It gets through gears better than almost any car out there in GT3 specs. So for Vorosky, he's got a car that will play ball with it, with Sebastian Jackson, Roberto De Filippis just behind trying to work their way through. Now is where you've got to be very sensible if you're Trevor Vorosky. Can I work my way through to the inside at any place? 1 is the question, and 2, maybe can I piggyback a pick off of some of the slipstream? That's the next place you've got to start thinking. And there goes the slice through. Just as we go to Jakub Krafek then from Czechia, and in 6th position looking for top 5 in category. Remember that Garen Batten is fighting for points and position with Trevor Vorosky. Even though they're not in the same class, they could end up with points parallel by getting the same finishing position.
And that's what makes the major series such a fun series. You've got to be brilliant in driving every type of car, every type of discipline on the iRacing service. And it's one that challenges you, the driver, to really hone your skills to perfection, and also allows you to drive different cars like what we have right now and still fight out for the same championship. Pedro Diaz up into 4th place. Now hard defense, a little bit of box in to allow the pass as Hensi goes and falls down in 5th place. But take a look. Pedro hopes to keep the pressure on and wants to try and get past Corns ahead of him. This is going to be a tough fight. However, the Cadillacs have got brutal power, but they do become a little bit difficult towards the later stage of the race. as they will start to lose a lot of grip on those rears. You do tend to light them up a little bit more, so you've got to play with those engine managements to get yourself a bit more settled.
Something's happened to Garrett Batten because he's dropped down a couple of places here. He's behind Jaco van der Plat at this stage, and so that drops him down even further in the category that he would want. So I reckon he's had a tangle or an off somewhere over the last lap, and so his job becomes exponentially harder.
And that is just going and taking the championship and twisting on its head. Pedro, however, looking to try and get a pass done. Not able to into the right-hander, but keeps in the slipstream. Is this going to help out? Down to second gear. Floor it on your way out. A little bit of lighting up the rears. And now utilizing that battery. Going to aggressive mode in the engine management for just putting as much power down to the rears. Trying to get yourself right through all the traffic, aims for the inside, not late enough on the brakes, however, does take the ideal racing line to keep his position.
Michael Hess has joined the group now from 5th position up to 4th and is now going to start deciding whether I'm going to find a way through or otherwise. So at half an hour, a quarter yes, of this way through the race, you're now starting to look around and say, can Michael Hesse now start bringing himself into this with Seba Cornes and Pedro Diaz? I think that's going to be the next question that's there. Behind that, you got Richard Cumlin trying to work through the traffic with the likes of Byron Kurtzer now looking at Oscar Motan for position, and the 4-1-1 from Sweden is going to have to be under a lot of stress at this point. Catching the curve slightly and wiggling through turn 6, but now, turn 5, now into turn 6 and 7. Motan currently has just enough, I would say, sanity to continue on with this one.
I mean, this is turning into a bit of fun, but this is what you get from Road Atlanta. So many difficult corners mixed in with multi-class racing brings the chaos, it brings the fun, but it also goes and gets to show the driver's temperament. How aggressive are you? Or are you a little bit more patient to try and wait for the corners? Or are you willing to go for that dive? That 1 centimeter gap that can make or break your race. Are you going to do it now? Are you going to do it later? You've got 2 hours to play with. Well, 1 hour and 28 minutes to go. And everyone seems to be rather open, except for Byron Kurtzer, who's dealt a little bit more pace on his car. He's trying as hard as he can to close up the gap. His last lap time was a 15.38, which was incredibly quick. And considering nearly on, he's a little bit quicker than the likes of Oscar ahead of him, as he's trying to close that gap up.
Yeah, he's trying what he can. 15.3 plays 15.8 is a half a second difference, but there are pros and cons. Cameron de Bastos, just as we check away, it's going to be there. Jeff Schmeier now is still searching for a way past Wayne Hutchison and not getting any luck at all. They're stuck behind Noah Kelly now, who is down as the last runner in GT3 at the moment. And when you've got hypercars and effectively LMP2s out there running, it is the toughest category in GT3 because you just need to look in the mirrors almost all the time.
And we've got to also talk about that Jeff Schmeier is part of the Dog Bear team, and they are fighting currently in 3rd place of the team championship overall for 2025. And so every point is crucial to get the climb up through the order. And Jeff Schmeier needs to start gaining positions here to help add to that team championship and ensure that they can be in the top running, to have both the Dog Bear Kingsman Racing and Dog Bear team running in the top 10 overall.
So, can you find those places? Can you unlock what is needed? And there is Seba Cornet still holding Pedro Diaz. Gets a massive, wild kick of oversteer coming off the exit there of turn 7. And that will temper any run by a long distance. And it will also give a sniff to Michael Hesse, who will continue to bring himself then back into roll and rank and file. So there is still that to consider. But Pedro Diaz can't sit down and say it's comfortable and I'm getting what I want. He knows that he's just got to continue to put the good laps in. They'll pass the GT3 leaders once again, and ultimately it's funnel yourself into line. They'll get the clearance of 1, they'll get the clearance of 2. On the outside, Michael Hess has got to fall into line and just about gets given the room by Vavrovsky.
Well, Varun was not going to let that inside go. He knows that a bit of understeer there would absolutely kill his drive, and Vavrovsky was hoping to try and get a little bit more pace. But here is a difference between the classes as the GTPs leave the GT3s in a straight line, but it's hard on the anchors as Michael now has to try and close up that gap as fast as possible to the likes of 4th. As Diaz now has a little bit more clean room. This is exactly what he wants to have, to try and keep a little bit of breathing room between himself and Michael behind.
Yeah, so this is where Oscar Fredriksson will be very happy in this race, controlling now by almost 10 seconds in the opening section. And you get drivers around here, Stephen, who have specialties. And I'd say Oscar Fredriksson is one of the best enduro specialists in the major series.
He's kept it clean, he's kept it consistent. He's had so far 3 top 5s during the course of the season. He had 7 starts, he's lying 9th in the championship. So a win here is most certainly what he wants to have, to bump him up a few points, especially now that we're getting closer to the end of the major series championship. He wants to try and make it work. He wants to be at the top and have a fighting chance in that top 5.
He'll love to get there. The Latvian Uldis Putekelis is there in second position. There's a car spun down at 10A and 10B, and it's Roberto Di Filippis. The hypercar's gone around there, so that's troublesome on the back of the likes of Jeff Schmeier. I think he's just tagged the rear. So Vavayan has also lost out the race lead now. So Trevor Vavrovsky has found his way through to the race lead and has done so wonderfully out on track.
And that's all that he needed to do. Sit, wait, bide one's time, wait for the mistake, and go for the gap when it's given. Now, Stephen has got a little bit more difficulty as he has to apply the pressure back onto Vavrovsky, who has been leading out the major series, who hasn't put a foot wrong yet. Still needing to try and figure out what is going to be the game plan here. How far can he go? And this is now all in the bags for Stephen Vavayan to fight for that first place. He's not in for the points, but he can take the fight to the probably going to be the new champion leader for the major series European division. Oscar into the pits. The 90-litre tank has run out, up on the jacks, and tires are being done on that car.
Yeah, so that will mean pit stops are going to start being brought into mind. So with Oscar Motan in, I would say for the Dallara P217, that is right on schedule. Rainer Foxy Ressa then from Estonia, driving down the hill in a mock-up Jordan livery, back up the hill again and looking to get that drive out of turn 5. Turn 5, toughest corner on the circuit. By the matter of fact, you got that toughest section before it and that huge curb on the end. Oh, car stopped right in front. So who's that down there at turn 6 who's decided that that one's not going to work?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not quite sure, but Rainer going and getting a big fright, seeing a LMP car not really in the right ones. What about GDPs by the looks of it? They got caught out heading into turn 6, bit of lockup, maybe going and clipping a little bit on the dirt, but take a look at Michael Hofferdaelson out in first place, got a bit of room to play with. However, he needs to keep a consistent pace. Now knowing that the cars are starting to run a bit short on fuel, they're going to get a little bit lighter and a little bit more harder to keep in check. The drivers are going to have to keep their head on a swivel of where they're going to pass, because if you're offline, if you buy those marbles, it's going to be very, very hard to keep these Dallara P217s, these LMP2s in check, especially when you're starting to be overtaken by the GTPs and have the aero wash over the nose that can throw you around.
Corness has been able to build a bit of margin then, as I believe it would have been Pedro Diaz actually who would have been that car who's dropped time and spun around then, so they would have been the 4-1-2 down there at turn 6 who would have had that moment around, because Hesse's up to 4th, it's then Kumlin in 5th, and Pedro Diaz now down to 6th place. So Michael Hafler-Darson in the middle group. It's always tough being in the middle. It's almost like being a middle child in a sense. You don't get as much the attention, but you got all the responsibility still.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to explain it, actually. That's the only way I think you can explain, of just trying to keep it all together. You can't push too hard, you can't back off. There's not enough room both ways to just take a bit of a breather. You have to just keep a perfect line the whole way through, and it does take a bit of mental strain on the drivers as you start to keep an eye on focusing what you need to do. You get into a bit of a rhythm, get stuck into tunnel vision, and that's when we do see mistakes starting to creep out, when something is slightly off sides. If it's slightly wrong, a little bit of dirt, a car spun in the wrong way, it can end with a lot of tears by the end of it.
Matthew Crisp in 2nd position, down by 5.7. It's going to need a little bit of help to try and close that gap down a bit. Alex Crowe at 3 seconds back of that, trying to work hard, but in comes Matthew Crisp then to the pit stop, because in comes the likes of Chris Sauerlich to come and make a pit stop as well. So we are starting to see the LMP2s making that call, and GTPs are not going to be too far behind that.
And it's interesting to see Michael and Alex Crowe still going out a little bit longer. They got an extra lap on Matthew Crisp and Daniel Horner. Byron Kutzer doing exactly the same. So you can see a couple of the drivers utilizing a bit of lift and coast to try and save that extra little bit of fuel. Others may be going in due to traffic. Try and get the fuel stop underway, keep going on with the race and focus on where you need to be. But they haven't hit the hour mark. So we do expect into the last 20 minutes of the race, we will see these cars going back into the pits to try and get a splash and dash and get going. Wayne Hutchison joining in 11th place. He's going to be trying to get a bit of a fuel stop. The question is, are they taking new tires, or are they going and keeping the old set on to retain some of the heat so they don't have to go through a very nasty period of driving on ice?
I think they have to take new tyres. I think you just lose so much when you've got the old tyres on, and the fuel is covered by taking tyres as well. So there's not much you can lose. Leader Hafler-Darson jumps in. Brian Scrivener currently in 13th position, trying to make some charge. And we did have a little look at it being 1, 2, and 3 at the front of the field, which is there, and actually and 4, we can say, with Casper Brockner in GT3. In comes Alex Crowe, who's deciding to represent Greenland with his flag, and that's something I like to see. All the fun flags that go out there. I've seen some people represent Chad, the South Sandwich Islands, Sao Tome and Principe we've seen in other races. I think it's a really cool addition.
You gotta represent, you've gotta have the flags on the car. I mean, it just adds so much to it, and especially in the major series where we've got some of the best drivers from around the world coming and battling it out on circuit, battling in the championships, representing your country, your home here in the major series is the only way to do it. And I hope that we get to see more of the drivers taking that inspiration, starting to add it to their liveries, and going into next year, seeing a lot more of that going into custom liveries for each race.
Michael Hafler-Darson out and away and comfortably clear of the likes of Alex Crowe, who gets up to speed and is right behind Matthew Crisp in 2nd position. So good call there on the pit stop. They've closed down to the Alcatec NHR car, which was there in place. Michael Hesse is having a good run, but for the moment, it's about this one, 2nd and 3rd. It's Crowe and Crisp who are there together, and suddenly it's every car that's trying to find a way through. There goes the Cadillac, I believe, pushing by of Pedro Diaz, that decides that it's the right time to do so with the lovely Florida livery that is there and penciled all across it at the moment. So it's all about making it work. Sorry, I correct myself. That looks like it's going to be slightly different there for Pedro Diaz. But at least for the moment, Alex Crowe in 3rd is trying his best, but that gap, 2 seconds.
And it's interesting to see Hafler-Darson still holds 1st place after his pit stop. Matthew Crisp into 2nd, Alex Crowe in 3rd. So even with an extra lap, there hasn't been too many big changes to the LMP2 field, And how is that going to play out towards the end of the race when they have to gamble on their pit stops of how far can they go? Are they going to run that extra lap, or are they going to take a little bit earlier? Are you going to be able to lift and coast a little bit more? This is where it starts to become a little bit more of a thinking game, especially as we approach the halfway mark of this race.
I tell you what is interesting is understanding Trevor Favroski, because when he started, he was a pure oval specialist and he was absolutely nowhere when it came to races like these. Now you flip the script and say he's an all-rounder who can be good pretty much everywhere. It goes to show you that time with the cars is so critically important, as Vivian sees in front of him Petit and then Lawrence Verbeek, as that is Ray Partridge in a world of hurt down there at 10A and 10B, and that was looped all on his own in the 8.
Unfortunately, if you get your braking point wrong, it just goes absolutely haywire. You can put a wheel off into the dirt. Now you got to try and scrub that dirt off for the next 3 corners. And we also got that's Byron Kutzer, who's gone and lost it into the dirt, loses out of position, and not what he wants to have. The South African going and doing a little bit too much farming here at Road Atlanta, trying to get it all back together, but means braking now is going to be a little bit skittish. He's going to have to take a rather cautious approach in through 10A and 10B before he gets flat on the gas yet again, feel the light lift on the nose, and have to just keep it nice and comfortable behind the GT3 on exit.
So Era 404 position is then found. Up to 6th then. To 5th goes Jaco van der Plaat, as Kutzer is 6th, and Garen Batten now in 7th place is looking at today, and I think he'd be staring down the barrel of saying that the way this first half of the race has gone, this is a missed opportunity.
Unfortunately, hasn't been his time. I actually had a chat to Garen in the course of the week, and he said he's going to be focusing on the major series a little bit more to try and focus on scoring the championship. Unfortunately, going to be stepping away from the NEC, will be a little bit more in the background for that. So he wants to perform even better this year for the major series to carry a lot of motivation into the upcoming 6 hour.
Michael Hesse jumping into the pits, very nearly threw it in the barriers as he went down in. Pateklis is in, and we're firmly now here at 45 minutes in at your hypercar, your GTP pit stops.
And we've got Casper, who's trying to navigate past one of the team heap together cars and seeing a little bit of difficulty here. This is a bit irritating, as you can see 3rd place starting to run away from you. Tries to utilize the toe, but both Mercedes are not backing down, and that, I think, is Jelman Price that is just holding him back just ever so slightly. Takes a dive on the inside to try and make it work, and not allowing the back marker any room to play around. It's like, I need to get around you. You just cost me 1.5 seconds, and I need to try and get that back some way, somehow.
Casper Brockner is not going to be a happy character with Janneman Preuss. That much we can say, but what we will note is that Darren Sharples isn't getting too far away with the way that the traffic is starting to play out. In are your leading duo of Oscar Fredriksson and Saber Corness. They have both hit the lane, which now leaves control to Pedro Diaz out there in front, as the Uruguayan now looks for the box.
Now this is where it starts getting rather interesting for the GTPs. They haven't quite made the hour mark, which many of the drivers were aiming for. The question now comes down to how fast can Pedro open up the gap to really go and try mitigate some of the damage that has happened during the course of the race. He wants to try and hold as high as that top 3, but it is going to be a lot of hard work to do it, as he's trying to get, I think this is going to be his in-lap at the moment. He wants to put at least half the circuit ahead of the likes of Kumlin, who is chasing him down in 2nd place, along with Oscar Fredriksson in 3rd.
Well, half a straight will certainly get the job done at this moment, and Pedro Diaz, who had rocketed his way by Richard Kumlin, once again getting the pass back, is now going to be looking at, okay, let's make this pit stop. Let's go through 1:12.4s. He was running. Oscar Fredriksson, by comparison, back up to speed again, and in comes Pedro Diaz to come in and get that first of 2 pit stops underway. Big lock up and spins it round in the pit That would have been the hugest drama there. And speaking of Cumlin, he's there. Now he's put it on the attenuator. There goes the front clip that goes on by Pedro Diaz, having a disaster down to the pits.
Oh man, that is rear suspension nose, and that is going to be a proper bit of damage. But the question is, did he also speed into the pit lane as well when he got it completely wrong? Because that's just going to add more pain to him. So it doesn't sound like we've got black flag on him, but that is going to be a long waiting time, or he utilizes that spare
I think he's got his fast repair.
Oh no.
I think he's forgotten his one fast repair. He's just come off the jacks now, and I'm just waiting for that black and orange mechanical flag to disappear, and it just isn't.
Oh my. So maybe opting to just try in case of any bigger crashes, but from leading the race to going and losing it in the pits, that is rear suspension damage. This is going to be heading on 3 minutes worth of damage, plus that car is going to be worked on. I mean, you couldn't have thought of a race going any more wrong than getting it all types of chaos into the pits. But that is nature of the circuit. You're coming in through a fast right-hander. You got to slow the car down quite a bit. And if you're a little too fast down the gears, you lock the diff, and that's game over as you head into the pits.
So it now means Oscar Fredriksson leads GTP, Uldis Petekalis is second, and then Michael Hess is in third, and Richard Cumlin, just as we cut away, runs off the circuit. So that there, tough in terms of that little moment out there on screen. So Cumlin able to continue on, but it does come at the price of running off the circuit. Remember, incident count is super low for these 2 hours here. It's 20 incident points before drive-through, and then every 10 after that.
And this has just changed the race completely for the GTPs as Cameron Bastos off circuit and rejoins ahead of our LMPs. And there is a problem. That looks to be Cameron actually in the wall.
Yeah, he's gone off in the grass there and spun the car around, I think, by just rejoining circuit there. So Cameron de Bastos is going to have to try and walk his way back home to the pits to get the damage on the front sorted. So that was not ideal. We'll take another look. So there's so many cars in front. He catches the curbs as he goes up. He catches it wrong, goes across the grass, tries to get it back onto circuit. And then because of the grass on the tyres, he never gets it properly settled, and the car just pitches into the wall.
And this was meant to be his goodbye to the McLaren, not exactly how he wanted to have. And he's going to be having his teammates talking to him, trying to calm him down during the course of the race, saying, listen, focus back up. You've still got a bit of time here. How's the car feeling? Do we need to get this into the pits? And Cameron de Bastos is going to be aiming for the pit lane. However, LMP2's into the dirt as they try to make their way through turn
Seb
2.
Jackson. That's actually a hypercar of Seb Jackson then, one of the Fusion cars, jumping off, just ran wide at turn 1, easily done, no harm, no foul. Oscar Motan, one of them, who goes by in 8th place now here in this one. Garen Batten's jumped a couple, he's now back up into 6th because he's through on Byron Kurtzer.
And Byron trying to apply the pressure yet again on Garen. I mean, this is going to be a tough race for the drivers to dig deep, try and figure out what they need to do to move forward.
Well, at the moment, I would look around and say it's about keeping yourself on the island first and foremost. Secondly, think about positions, because in a race like this, where it's so hectic and you've got so many moving pieces and parts, I wouldn't put any stock. Oh, huge accident up there, turn 6 and 7. That one is massive between Michael Hesse, who was 3rd overall, and I'm not quite sure that who he's caught up in that one. It's one of the GT3s. It's Jaco Grobler.
Yep, one of the Team Heap Together cars, making all 3 Team Heap Together cars involved in an incident. First Janneman Price, then it was likes of Cameron de Bastos, and now Jaco Grobler getting a bit of that luck as well at the top. Not an ideal circumstance. And both the LMP car and the GT3 are going to be hurt properly.
We'll take another look at this then. So Michael Hesse running through, happy, looks to the inside of the 401, and the 401 tries to shut the door on him. And suddenly, as we just take a little look over reverse, bang, a sandwich of the highest caliber.
And it nearly was a 4-car pile-up versus the 3. Unfortunately, not what the drivers want to have. Michael Hesse utilizing that fast repair to get himself back out on the circuit. Jaco Krobler will have to do exactly the same, as that front end is completely second-hand and not how you want to have things happen. But this is the difficulty of having 2 different speeds, of the GT3s and the LMP2s. Your cornering is so much quicker in the LMP2s, and the GT3's not able to get on the gas. That concertina effect comes into play, and it depends on how awake the drivers are to avoid those impacts. However, we saw a bit of a tight situation. Jaco Krobler did have a McLaren on top of him as well, and that just landed up with a very nasty sandwich. Could have ended a lot worse for the BMW. However, a little bit of a ding in the side, and still carrying on the merry way.
Yeah, so that's Wayne Hutchison versus Jeff Schmeier still, and Jeff finds himself then dealing with the traffic and that gap extending out over a second. Crow and Crisp, that gap remains at 1.3 seconds out there, as here is Casper Bruckner looking for third. Darren Sharples is there on just in front, but will it be a case of 407 moving by 402? The 401 that was involved in the accident earlier there with Hesse was Daniel Pais, but Sharples has the legs going into 10A and 10B. That McLaren is certainly working well in a straight line.
That's definitely a lot of hard work coming into play. The drivers have to consider that there's 5 minutes before they get to the halfway mark, and Casper keeps the pressure on, trying to figure out where can he get this pass done. How hard can he push to get into second place, or is he going to rather wait it out a little bit more? These two have been pacing each other throughout the race, and now will be considering where they have to be to make themselves go a little bit further. The sun is starting to set a little bit, and you can see the reflection getting a little bit more harsh.
What a run, and no, he's not going to get a chance. Has to lift out of it there because Michael Hesse was running down the inside and said not a chance as they go through. Stephen Vervayen has hit pit lane. We're in GT3 pit stops with 55 minutes ran, which is just over the cusp of what they need. So they are going to be turning around and saying, well, we're on splash and dash territory at 10 minutes left in the race if they pit from this point, 8 minutes from this moment if they pit. So eyes are firmly set on car number 10 on how late you go, and this group second and third.
Always a tough time for the drivers, but it's about the consistency. But we can see the dirt starting to build up off the racing line, which means the driver's going to have to take a little bit more cautiously as they make their way through turn 1 into 2 and the hard braking zone into 3. As you go through the right-hander, you will feel a little bit slick out there, and the GT3s like Trevor Roski going and dictating the pace to the GTP and LMP2 behind him.
Stephen Vervayen's come out in 6th place after that pit stop, so the likes of Jakob Krafek, for example, still stuck behind after making that stop. So we're very much in the wheelhouse here as Vervayen is almost a lap back by comparison. So it looks like a full pit stop here for the GTs is taking about a minute or so in terms of time, a minute 5. So for Vavroski, that's some very good reference in terms of how much stationary time is going to be needed between now and the end of this race, with an hour and 3 sitting itself down. At the moment, it's about hold on to your nerve. And speaking of drivers trying to hold on to their nerve, I think Håkan Schert has just had a little bit of an off, trying to avoid some of the traffic around. It's a very, very busy hour mark that's hit as Trevor Vavroski looks around. There's a car spun around. That's Byron Kurtzer as Vavroski pits.
Byron Kurtzer losing the tail and will be questioning what he can do. The tyres are also going to be taking a bit of strain. Trevor Rotsky had a clear run all the way through. However, where is he going to come out to survive?
And Daniel Holmer's had a disconnect, and so that's going to drop him down right to the back of the field. So if he was going to have some championship aspirations, he's going to have those go away today.
That is an absolute gut punch. There's nothing you can do, and will count as mechanical error. I mean, that's just not what we want to do. Hard on the brakes, Byron Kurtzer. Just locked up the rear, and that was off the road.
Yeah, he's just thrown it into the corner there, and how difficult it is to try and carry the speed, because you need to have that quick transfer. And I think he realizes that even though he hasn't made any contact with the barriers there, that it has been a tough day. I'm already at incident point limit, and it's going to be a very tough hour to come from that. So pulls it over to the side, says it's day done, and that will do. Alex Crow, though, finding himself in a little bit of a difficult situation now, because Matthew Crisp is just able to get the traffic a little bit better at the moment.
Well, had a chat to Jonathan Price, and he says he's walking away from the car. He's got 50 minutes worth of damage on the car, and he's going to be waiting it out. Doesn't want to use that fast repair as yet. Wants to see if he can try and get things going.
Brian Scrivener was down there at turn 6, pointed the wrong way, and still waiting to get back out on track again.
Not ideal circumstances. You're going to wait for a fair amount of time, especially on this track, as traffic has built up right the way through. Garen trying to make his pass done up on the inside and late on the anchors to just try and get it done in through the second right and up into 4th place. Scrivener gonna be cursing the moment there, but it's Garen who's gonna be smiling ear to ear. A pass through the double right, not easy to do, and now in the chase to try go for the likes of Alex Crow, a little bit up the road. Got a bit of fair amount of time to play there, but Garen hasn't lost that 3rd place as yet.
Well, here's the key. If Garen Batten is starting to walk through and is now up into 4th place, he will know that Alex Crow, Matthew Crisp and the like are way too far away by comparison for what he wants. It's a massive gap of about half a lap he has to deal with. But with the way that this field has been dropping about here around the hour, it's been tough. Vavrovsky's coming for a stop. The only driver who has stayed out long enough then is David H. Baker, and David has a very good habit of saving fuel. He was one of only 2 drivers a few years ago to make a 5-stop strategy work at the Indianapolis 500, and he was able to pick up 2nd place in that race on a 5 versus 6 strategy. So David H. Baker right now is good for a 1-stop.
This is gonna be playing into his favor, and many of the drivers will be trying to figure out what can they do to get exactly that, to try and push the fuel a little bit further in the race. And many of the drivers will be thinking, if I change my throttle shaping, does that make a bit of a difference to save that extra liter of fuel to get to the end? Unfortunately, not going to be for majority of the GT3 field. Trevor Vorotsky going to be quite happy out in 1st place, keeping a consistent gap over Baker throughout the race. He's hoping to outpace him just in lap time to try and outweigh the strategy.
Yeah, and David H. Baker leaves pits, and he will be in 4th position, drops down to 5th, and so the likes of those trying to move on through, he's looking at where he can get back out and away again, and the key is he'll be around Michael Hogg, Colby Buck and co, who are out of the pits. I would look around at Jakob Krafek and say he's ahead of that, so that's great work from David H. Baker. Now get the strategy to work to the end. It's not a guarantee that his strategy is a winning one, but if everyone has to come in for a splash and dash, he'll certainly be picking up a couple points here and there.
And Oscar Fredriksson going to be quite happy on his climb through the championship as well. All he needs to do is keep that consistent pace, keep going, and think about the long game, the strategies coming into play to ensure that he can hold the GTP lead towards the end of the race. This is all coming into the later stage of the championship, and it makes you wonder how many of these drivers are starting to think about that strategy of what do they need to secure their positions come the end of the 2025 European Championship.
Well, they know that every single point will count at this late stage, and this is an all-year-round championship. There aren't many all-year-round championships, but when you get down to crunch time, you got to sit down and say, have I done the best I can over the course of this season, or is there anything more that I could have done? to go and put things together. So I would look down on this and say, right, we are in for an absolute treat of racing. They know that they've got a lot more coming up then, because there's 3 races left in the calendar after this one. The Roval 400, the Bathurst 500 Enduro, and then as well the Japanese Grand Prix that they've got to try and put in the back pocket. So that's 3 very strong races left in this season, and I look around at Fredriksson, I look around at his pace, and I reckon he has a really good shot of challenging some of the best out there. Battle on for 10th in category right now, as Lawrence van Beek now brings himself into play, as behind him is Ray Partridge trying to figure out which way he can go and get this move around Cameron de Bastos. They're going to have to go in order to find a way to continue on with this, and Verbeek gets the launch that's needed to leave Ray Partridge in the dust.
This is also the moment in the race that the drivers are starting to feel that lactic acid building up in the legs, building up in the arms. They're starting to get dry eyes as they focus on. This is always the toughest part of the race, as you just focus on your rhythm. You start getting into that tunnel vision and just banging in the lap times, lap after lap after lap, to try and make it work, hoping for nothing to throw you off that rhythm. You get into just an autopilot mode at this point. We will see the changeover come closer to the 20 minutes, where it's going to be the last minute dives to try and get that victory.
Well, you start turning around to the 50% move, the 40% move, the 30, the 20% move as the way to go. But Jeff Schmeier is having none of that. He's been shadowing Wayne Hutchinson as his shadow the entire race long, and they are a lap down now on Matthew Crisp in second position. So that gives you a sense of how much time they've been dropping. 1:15s compared to 1:13s, 2 seconds a lap. That will go pretty quickly out there, as the Dog Bear car has been holding its own out there. And then you've got Alex Crowe who's trying to get by that. Toughest category of class to a car to pass is always your own.
That's it. It's always coming down to, you've got a little bit more power of the GT3s. You haven't got enough power to get past the GTPs, but when you got your own class to contend with, you have to try and hope to stick in the slipstream as much as possible, and maybe just try and will the driver ahead of you to lift off the gas, give you that little bit of room, the extra 2 kilometers needed to try and get that pass done, or moving over to the right-hand side like Jeff has done to allow the cars through. But I'd say very sensible, and thank you once again. Not many drivers tend to do that. I'll just open the door, roll the carpet out, and allow the cars to get on through. They rather try and hold the racing line, because there's no reason to jump out the way.
No, and that's where Jeff Schmeier's done a really good job of just letting through Alex Crowe, and now try and use him as a pick against Wayne Hutchinson. They've all got to get around David H. Baker. Hutchinson leaves that one to go through, drops back into line and says, right, around the outside I'll go, and I'll still get my pick, because Jeff Schmeier's not got anything against David H. Baker. And the mechanical grip of the GT3s is that very akin in the low-speed corners to those of the higher categories of car, and that is where you are going to find the issues with the GT3s, is they're going to be better on the brakes.
And also putting you offline into the marbles means that you got next to no grip out there. The traction control comes into effect for the GT3 cars. Well, unfortunately for the LMP2s, it's about your right foot majority of the time. You've got to be a little bit more gentle and geared down from second to first to just try and get any form of drive out of the top end and be able to contend with that straight. Unfortunately, you don't want to be on the outside line at the top. You want to be on the inside line.
Tough day so far for Fabio Braga. He's off kilter with strategy, will need a splash and dash at the end, and has just come in for a stop. He's currently 3 laps down and trying to work away through some of the LMP2s to get back up then into overall position. Michael Hesse in 7th will have his eyes firmly set on Gary Thomas in front, who's there in 6th, and in front of them is 2nd overall Aldis Putekilis. So this is going to get a little bit awkward out there. Gary Thomas might need to call on his teammate, can you give me a tow?
That's going to be just bring me along, get me a little bit closer, and let's have a little bit of fun. We got 52 minutes remaining, and this is where having a buddy in the race is rather helpful, especially in these longer races. You try and rely on your teammates to give you some form of information or to give you that little bit of a competitive edge, especially when you're in a fight like this. And there is a mistake going in. Michael nearly having the nose of his caught off, but Gary Thomas having the nose and rear, taking big impact against the tires. It does get bit back on, but I do suspect he's going to be having a bit of Kremlin damage in that car. That Acura not going to be pointing as straight as he would like.
Gary Thomas is going to be upset about that because there's nothing that he did wrong in that incident. Michael Hesse tried to attack down the inside on the exit of 10B, tagged his rear, and Gary Thomas had nowhere to go. That Acura had so much kinetic energy there through the tyres that it was always going to spin him round. And so he's got the black and orange mechanical flag, and he's going to have to hope he's still got a fast repair remaining out there with 51.5 minutes to go then in this race. Gaps have certainly opened up now. Alex Crowe finds himself 6 seconds down on Matthew Chris, 6 seconds down as well on Michael Hafler-Darson. Oscar Fredriksson, look at that gap, 16 seconds clear at the front.
It's gonna be an interesting run, and it's Oscar Fredriksson's race to lose. All he needs to do is keep the rhythm up. His lap times have been quite consistent despite the traffic, and he's hoping to keep that going. He wants to try and push himself a little bit more. I mean, his best lap time was a 109.85, and he's been running a 109.94. He did get into the 110s for brief couple of laps when the traffic was at its worst, but he's back into the 109s to stay in front of Patulkas, who's been dropping from 110s to 111s throughout the race.
Jakub Krafek now looking for a way to get by David H. Baker, and this would be a key pass as through both of them will go Seba Cornes, who hits the brakes lovely at turn 3 and gets by the pair. But Jakub Krafek now sees how important it is, and I'm looking at that gap at the front. Vavrovski's in full push mode, I'd say, at the moment. Vavayan, I think, is on a desperate try and save. Vavrovski is a full 20 seconds clear at the front.
It's going to be an interesting race indeed, and the drivers are going to have to work their way around it. I do want to also bring up the fact that we've got Richard Kremlin, who is in the GTP class. He's now falling into the LMP2 class and having a bit of a battle there. So he's got Michael Hafler-Darson, Matthew Chris, and Alex Crowe. They are currently ahead of him on track position, which means those 3 cars will not be getting blue flags when Richard has to try and get round to get back onto the leading pack of the GTPs to get closer to Gary Thomas.
David H. Baker knows that discretion is the better part of valor, and Jakub Krafek comfortably gains his place. Daniel Holmer's desperately trying to recover back after his disconnect, and he's 5 laps down on your overall leader, 3 laps down on the class leader, so that's really tough. In comes Seba Cornes then to make a second stop at 49 minutes to go. I'm worried that's enough to get home.
It's quite possibly the case. I mean, 49 minutes, he's managed to pull it in this far. I'm suspecting that Seba may have done enough to carry it through. It's going to be cutting it fine, but it is an opportunity to work out in his favor. Cameron Bastos having won the GTPs of Colby Buck, getting past. A quick and easy maneuver, and Colby up into 4th is a driver that we haven't spoken much about, but he's been keeping things rather consistent in his time. He wants to try and keep ahead. He wants to try and catch up to Richard Camlin, who is up in 3rd. Apologies, Richard is not lower than the LMP2s, but Colby has been consistent on his pace. He did a 110.3 as his best, and so far been sitting in the high 111s to try and fight his way through.
Colby Buck's been doing a good job, and 4th place, you take the points like this, the way that they are proving to be scored. And I think there are going to be a lot of drivers up and down the order as they go through, and we're just getting words from race control. There is a drive-through penalty for Michael Hesse for the contact with car number 7, which was Gary Thomas. So Michael Hesse is going to have to take a trip down the lane, and that might bring Sebastian Jackson a bit closer.
Oh, when the naughty finger is waved at you, all that you can do is keep your head down and hope no one recognizes you as you take the very, very slow 50 kilometers through the pit lane to try and get yourself back out on the circuit. Not an easy time, and that also does play into the driver having to calm down a little bit, think about the race, think about what you're doing out there, maybe going a little less aggressive. For others, it's going to be putting a stone in the shoe, that irritation that might push the button a little bit further. So Michael Esser takes a gentle stroll, 50 kilometers drive through in the pit lane, and will be listening to all the cars coming by that he has to now try and overtake yet again the GT3s and back markers to be able to fight back in 6th position.
Well, we'll get straight back up to speed once more, leaves the pits and does so now, finding that speed again, but now we'll need to just open up opportunity and say, right, I've had my slap on the wrist, now I've got to hope that nothing further decides to dislodge me over the course of this race. Brockner as well is keeping himself close here in regards to the likes of Stephen Vivian, who is currently only 4 seconds down the road, with Michael Hesser in the middle or coming up towards the of that car in front, which is Casper Brockner. I would say that Brockner's got himself an interesting race from now on in. There's the smallest gap for the lead, which is surprising to say at 8 seconds long. Michael Haflidarson is going about this business probably the best of anyone. Yes, he's under the most duress, but Matthew Crisp isn't really chiseling down in. 13.5 plays 13.9. Yeah, it's 4/10, but it's not enough.
And Haflidarson has just been keeping a consistent pace just through the race. Now going to be thinking about the strategy. How far can he go? Does he need to pit again? Will he make it to the end? These are the factors that's coming through. The LMP2s have a 90-litre tank. They're the smallest fuel tanks out of all the cars currently racing around the circuit. And that is also coming into the factor of you're going to have to utilize every little bit of pace that you've got, lifting and coasting through some of the corners and really helping with those slipstreams when the GTPs come on by to save that extra 1 or 2 laps that is possible around the circuit.
David H. Baker still trying to hope that his strategy works out for him. The difference between him and Trevor now is almost 2/3 of a lap, and I would say that is not enough. You need a full pit stop to jump ahead in that regard for David H. Baker. I think you're looking at a very big splash and dash. That's maybe 30 seconds at best, and so all that saving, I reckon he'll get Krafek, and I think he'll be looking at Sharples maybe as someone to go. He's a podium outside threat at the moment, but I wouldn't say he's close enough to fight for the race win.
Well, got to talk about that he's fighting for the points. David H. Baker is currently sitting 10th in the championship. 9th is Oscar Fredriksson. 11th is Ulrich Smith, with Tom Guess and Uldis Patulkas in 13th position, trying to make his way through. So for David Baker, he needs to try and find just that little bit of momentum to try gain as many points as possible to stay in for the top 10 fight.
Well, in terms of this fight, I would argue that it's about holding yourself steady. Jeff Schmeier has been waiting here with Wayne Hutchison, and it's been tough because if you follow someone around, yeah, it's great, you follow someone around, but you're not going to gain the position if you're not going to be willing to go and make that pass. And I think that's where it's been different for Hutchison, because Jeff Schmeier has just been only able to follow, and they are being reeled in by Lorenz Verbeek out there. So the difference maker there is 2 seconds a lap.
It's going to be hard work. Nonetheless, Jeff Schmeier been keeping his championship hopes alive. He's been trying to close up the gap in 9th position. I've got to say, Jeff Schmeier's been one of those keeping it smooth, but runs into an every so odd problem, but works his way around it. He's able to keep that consistency as we see Daniel Byers come into the pits. The ODC racing team going to be working on that BMW. This will be their final stop for the race to power it to the end. So we're going to see the GT3s getting a little bit of work done, trying to get them refueled back out and continuing on with the race till the checkered flag comes out.
That was a bowling shoe ugly stop in the pit box, it has to be said there. That was very much a lot of work for the crew. And Hutchison, we take a look there for the Canadian, who searches behind and sees that Dallara P217, figuring out there, Jeff Schmeier, what to do. They get some clearance here with Håkan Schurt, who is there just in front, and they've managed to get the clearance through of Verbeek now on the back. Daniel Holmer is there as well, and the weather, we know, is going to be dry the entire way, but we're in partly cloudy conditions, and a lot of cloud covers just come over, so 28 degrees track temperature it stands at the moment, as Schmeier sees behind that Holmer wants to try and work his way up a lap, and will get the freedom to do so, but runs a little bit wide through the corner.
And this is where the shadows get a little bit longer. Your braking markers tend to change ever so slightly. This is the type of race that many tend to overlook, but lots of mistakes come out towards the end of it. Now, you did talk about the pit stop looking not so great. Maybe he thought he was in the Porsche where you refill on the nose, not really with the BMW when it's on the rear. But he is in for a very long stop, to be said.
Fabio Braga down in there, and drive through for the 414 car out there, which is down in the pit. So Fabio Braga has a drive through for which he can't serve because he's completely out of damage and out the race.
And that has pretty much taken a huge knock for Fabio Braga in the Porsche. Not what you want to have. And we did talk about those incident limits becoming a little bit more of a hassle. Off track is 1, slides is 2, contact is 4. You already got 20 before you get your first drive-through, and 10 after that is a drive-through. It just impacts the race over and over and over. With multi-class action on a very tight circuit of Road Atlanta, there is no room for error, and you're gonna have to be a little bit more calm when you race here. You can't be aggressive, especially up against lower speed cars like the GT3s and the Dolares if you're racing the GTPs.
So Gary Thomas is back out and away after using his one and only fast repair, 2 laps down, eyeing up Roberto De Filippis for 8th in class. So if this move can be made, that is going to be critical. And there is a case of taking a car you're not very good at, because if you end up in a race like this and there's only 10... Oh, Gary! Bang! Just as I was trying to illustrate the point. A car you're not that good in, you could pick up some points that you wouldn't have done otherwise in a car that you're half as good as in when you're in a different category. But that'll be Gary Thomas, day dusted.
Jake, commentator's curse, are we going to talk about it, or are we just going to forget about it?
No, it's not real. It's not real. Okay. La, 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 la.
Never happened. Never happened. Oh man, that is a gut punch. Now the final corner, you feel the rear gets a bit lighter. You got to keep your foot on the power, but you can feel if it snaps. You try to catch it until the slit went a little bit too over, and at that point you just got to gently come off the gas. You don't want to touch the brakes. Unfortunately, a little too late for everything. Hard impacts into the wall, toe to the pits, and that is, as you said, a race done. He's already used his fast repair, and that is not how you want to be ending, especially here at Road Atlanta for the Major Series Europe, especially in round 9 of the championship.
Trevor Vavrosky coming into today would be looking at his points and saying, what can I do to score the most amount of points I can in this series? The answer he would have turned up with would be, I'm on 1386. I've got almost 100 to Garen Batten, and there's no Jesper Eriksson around to save me. Now, Jesper does have the ability to run the Americas race later on tonight, which will give him a chance to race against the likes of Nathan Dow, Christian Challoner, and Robert Nash, for example. But I would say at European level, Vavrosky is seeing Jesper Eriksson and going, I'm probably going to jump him. Garen Batten is my nearest rival, and he's dropping points to me, and everybody else around is dropping points to me because nobody can score over the top. So I think that Trevor Vavrosky is doing an absolutely sterling job, and when you consider that I'd say some of the rounds coming up for him aren't necessarily his cup of tea, this is a great time to be scoring some big points.
And it's going to be moving him up in the championship. Remember, he's second in the championship, but take a look at Oscar Fredriksson putting in the fastest lap time of the race with 38 minutes to go. I mean, that is absolutely going, and a big smile on his face going, well, I still can push. There's a little bit more in the tank here to get an extra lap or two and really stick it to the GTPs. I've got to say, phenomenal run. But Trevor has an opportunity to start leading the championship. It gets him away from Garen. It gets him up into first and possibly taking the chance to win the 2025 Major Series European Championship.
Garen Batten is in the pit, Jaco van der Plant in, Rainer Foxy-Rassar in, Chris Sauerlich also jumps down into the pit. We are in firmly the LMP2 stop range. Matthew Crisp trying to get through, and with a 2-hour race like this, they'll be looking at 40, 40, 40 as their ideal stops to get home, and Crisp has slightly missed his box.
Oh no, and you might think that, oh, that can't affect you too much, but that extra half a second lands up being an extra 2 seconds of trying to get your car sorted out. You get frantic behind the steering wheel, you get out of shape, and you go from autopilot mode to panic mode in a flash. And that is going to start impacting his drive. As we do see Ray Partridge coming into the box, cleaner stop this time. I think they've been listening to you talking about the GT3s not having a good stop. Everyone's now making sure they squared in the box instantly.
So, Michael Hafler-Darson jumps in from the race lead. Van der Plat leaves the pit and is in 6th position in the 4:04. So now you're starting to see all these drivers in LMP2 making their pit stops known. And so now it goes to Alex Crow now to make a run over towards the pits and making that decision then to try and jump in and hopes to get out a little bit closer to the likes of Matthew Crisp, who has now got himself out on circuit again in 3rd place. So the chase on, and a much needed chase at this stage of the race.
And Oscar Fredriksson yet again putting in the fastest lap time of the race, a 109.45. to try and keep the gap to Aldous Patulkas in 2nd place. Matthew Crisp going to be focusing on his drive. The question comes down, who has got enough to go a little bit further? Who's going to take the gamble for the overcut in this race? As we're going to see a lot of the drivers considering having to do that to gain that extra little bit of time, especially in the GT3 class where it's still rather close between every position.
Every place is going to matter, and so as Matthew Crisp makes his way, Hafler-Darson's out the pits. Alex Crow, by comparison, is only just leaving the pits. It's close, but it's just not enough for Alex Crow. He's cut that gap down to Matthew Crisp again, but again, he is short by a couple seconds.
And there is a bit of smoke in the distance. Someone's visited the farm, and that, unfortunately,
it's Rainer Foxy-Rassar, and that's straight out of the pits.
Oh, cold tyres, too fast on the gas, and that's all she wrote. Unfortunately, into the dirt. The question is, how much damage is on the car to keep going? Well, that's at least rather lucky. We've seen some very unfortunate crashes through the years. I mean, Jake, you've seen it. Coming out of pit lane, especially heading through the S's there, one mistake means that you're bouncing from the left to the right wall.
It was lap 2 in terms of stint for Rainer Rassar getting back up onto speed. But the real key of finding that speed was, right, I sit down, I find opportunity, I go to the level that I know I can, and ultimately the tyres decided they did not want to go and play ball. So I think that was quite telling in the way that Rainer Rassar had that slide. And Oscar Fredriksson now at 23 seconds clear at the front will be turning around and saying, well, there's only 3 of you left on the leading lap. My competition, I think, has spoken for itself and will be due in to stop probably in about the next 3 minutes.
It's going to be a rough race for the drivers. The GT3 is going to be considering what they need to do to try and keep the power on through the end. But the question is, are they going to stop in the next 3 minutes? Are they going to keep the power going to try and figure out what is the big game plan? As we see Aldous Patulkas out there in 2nd place, putting the hammer down. He was actually been majority of the teams in the GTP classes are utilizing the Majors Garage setups that he built to try and keep up to pace. And so far, they've been working out rather well and seem to be rather robust. How they're going to navigate some through the traffic as Cameron de Bastos is the next McLaren to get on by.
Yeah, so there you start to think about every single stage of, okay, everyone's set up starting to work. Colby Buck hits the lane and will be one of the first to make a final stop in your or your GTP category out there. Richard Cumlin currently in third now because of it. Saber Corness, remember, made that stop earlier, and so keep an eye on that, because Corness is going to also look to jump on up the position and does so in fourth. But we think Corness might need a stop and go, sorry, not a stop and go, but rather a splash and dash to get to the end. Richard Cumlin in third position, and a very respectful third position. Hasn't stepped too far out of bounds, has had maybe a couple of issues here and there, but nothing dramatic. Alex Crowe almost making contact there, running through, and Cumlin, I think, just letting that one go for the moment. Vavide in front with Salic and Shirt.
And we get reports of a black flag as well, so drive-through penalty added onto the fray, and that extra 1x does come into fray. You don't want to be getting drive-through penalties, especially this late into the race, as it's just going to take you out of the fight. For Alex Crowe, he is desperately trying to hold on to that third place. He's trying to fight out against Christian. You can see how hard he's throwing the LMP2 around, but diving towards pit lane to get that drive-through done and dust as fast as possible.
Well, the key is he's got half a lap on Garen Batten, so while he will confirm that he's going to really struggle against Matthew Crisp now in second place, what he will have is still half a minute here on Garen Batten, and while that's getting whittled down as he's on 72 kilometres an hour, trundling down through pit lane, he is still going to remain ahead, and now he's got his stage of the race to focus. But he'll only have 10 incident points now before a second drive-through could come through, and half an hour still left in this race. Garen Batten in fourth. This is damage limitation.
And it is going to be a major drive for Garen. He's going to be hoping that possibly Crowe gets that 10x, and it's easy to do. Put your wheel wrong just a couple of times, get a wheel over the curb, and you land up with a 1x. You'd blink and you would get that 10x, or you're going to land up driving way too safe and landing up slowing yourself down. I mean, we've seen this before, Jake. We've seen championships get thrown in the bin because people become over cautious when they start getting these drive-through penalties.
Oh, they're having a laugh out there. Alex Crowe, Hafler Darson and Garen Batten are all on the radio with each other. Hafler Darson went, "What happened to you, Alex?" Alex said, "Had to slow down, had to serve for instance, that's a shame." And Garen said, "Yeah, if you could just pull over to the side of the road, mate, that would be quite nice." And Alex just turned around and went, "You know what, I'll think about it."
Oh, you gotta love the chats, and honestly, this is the one thing I love about iRacing, is having that little bit of a radio communication to the drivers. You get to see the personalities coming out and having a bit of a discussion with one of them. It's one thing I always say about drivers: if you don't want to talk, just leave the radio on, listen to some of the chatter. It can be brilliant at times, but do make sure the mute button is around just when things get a little too hectic out there on the track.
Wayne Hutchison in ninth position. It's roles reversed now. Jeff Schmeier has found a way through at the stops and finally gets clearance and has a big slide over the top of the curb and catches a tiny bit of gravel, which now brings Wayne into right the rear behind one Mr. Jeff Schmeier. This is as close as it can get in through turn 7, over the top of the crest, slightly off camber, and now attack down the hill.
And this is going to work in the favor of Wayne as he's in the slipstream to pull himself along, get a little bit closer to Jeff Schmeier ahead. Can the Canadian get him on the brakes? Jeff will have to go a little bit defensive, but they do have the GT3 that they're not going to catch now into braking. They're going to be getting him over the hill. That is where you're going absolutely flat out. Wayne's going to try and box him in, looks for the inside, hoping to get the run on Jeff Schmeier, side by side, in through the right-hander, and Wayne Hutchison gets the pass. Done, dusted, and now needs to be rather cautious of the GT3 ahead of him, not to get boxed in by Jeff Schmeier's retaliation on that attack.
Yeah, Stephen Saunders, they've got to try and get around. They postured to the inside at turn number 3, and they managed their way around through 4, and now the S's section. So Wayne Hutchison gets his move and will feel happy because behind them both is once again Laurence Verbeek who is there trying to jump back to the group and say, I can find another way through that everybody else has been struggling with. In comes Uldis Petekalis then to make that final stop. Still waiting on the likes of Oscar Fredriksson to come down in. Fredriksson now at this point is waiting for just one more car to put the lap on the field.
It's still going to be a long race. 27 minutes and 38 seconds to go. Uldis Petekalis coming out of pit lane down into third place, and we'll be hoping to try and retake second. Remember, he's also in the fight for the top 10 of the European Major Series Championship and needs to score every single point possible to fight it out, to become a 2025 champion, or to be even in that top 5, the coveted top 5 of the European Major Series Championship that everyone wants to fight out for, having the medal at the end of the year to say, I've done it, I've been there, and have fought my way through in 2025 in every single discipline on iRacing.
Vavrovsky is in the wheelhouse though for it and driving away from the field. Half a minute, car's gone off behind, and it's Cameron de Bastos again.
Oh, Cameron losing it down at the bottom, and a black flag as well to boot. So the slide getting a 2x, and will be pulling into pit lane for the drive-through. Gonna be a nightmare event for the team heaped together. Cameron de Bastos, the highest standing of the three, with Jaco Krobler being second highest, and Jan Price still stuck in pit lane with repair work. But that McLaren also got a bit of damage to the nose, and will need a bit of repair work onto it as well if he wants to have a perfect car. Otherwise, it's going to be damage limitation on the way through.
Marcel Ridder also jumping down. That will be scheduled for a stop. Oscar Fredriksson taking the final service of his race, knowing that Richard Kumlin is trying to get close enough to move through, and another Swede out there. But the key here for Richard is he's also due a stop.
So still time on the board. The only one that has done the stop, hoping for the undercut to work, is Uldis Petekalis, who's down in third place. Will be taking back second, but won't be after likes of Oscar Fredriksson. Michael coming into the pits for his final stop. 25 minutes left in this race. Going to be up on the jacks, down and go. Is he going to take tyres? That is going to be the question, as this will be the shortest of the stops to see it through to the end. This comes down to the question, are you going to focus on retaining heat in the tyres, or are you going to work from scratch to carry on through the end?
Here comes the move from Laurens Verbeek against Jeff Schmeier, trying to steal a run on Marcel Ridder for some slipstream. Will have to be a long way around to go and get this move, and he's not quite there, but he fights for it, and he got caught in two minds there going into the corner. Very much at the 11th hour decided, nope, I'm going to back out of it and not go for that move. But Laurens Verbeek, very much a driver who can turn up the wick and say, I've got pace.
And the Dog Bear team going to be applauding the effort, saying, come on, we got points in the bag here. Let's keep the push.
So Trevor Vavrovsky's just made his pit stop. He's just come out and away again, and he'll come out in third place with about 10 seconds back off of Stephen Verweyen. So clear he couldn't make it, but it also confirms he's a mile ahead of David H. Baker.
And this is also going to keep the pressure on. Now Trevor Vavrovsky will have to try and focus on the long run here. The question is, he was fighting Stephen at the start of the race. He's going to have to do that towards the end. There's not a lot of room. He's got Brockner in the middle, who's not afraid to get elbows out even when he is going into his pit lap. He will fight you for that position. He wants to hold on second. He's climbed 8 places since the start of this race in his class, and he wants that to keep going.
Well, it's all about gaining a place here and gaining a place there, and I think that's been the way that you've got to go about business. There is Casper Brockner, who is in second position now in class, but the run that he's had has been sensational in the 407. The one thing that he walks into, though, is knowing that he can't catch Stephen Verweyen. He just knows that Verweyen might be a little bit worse when it comes to his pit stop. So it's going to be down to how much fuel you've got. It gets busy around the Bastos, and Jeff Schmeier takes attack from the rear with nowhere to go there for Casper Brockner.
Cameron de Bastos trying to hold his line, having the LMP2 looking on the inside. It just got all too busy, and that's how ugly it can get through the tighter parts of the section. Not an easy way to get a pass done. The concertina effect becomes a bit of a nightmare because you have to slow down quite a bit all round, as no one is on the ideal line. No one's having an easy time, and being stuck as PE in the middle doesn't make it any easier as an LMP2 car.
No, it really doesn't, and you're really having to fight for space as an LMP2, and that's just the way it goes. There's David H. Baker in 6th place, and looking around at those in and around him, I think that he's had a very good day at the office. He'll score some very nice points for what he's tried to do. He'll get Krafek, he'll probably get Darren Sharples as well, so for about 4th place, I reckon he's probably on for at this stage, but you know, this is the sort of underrated performance. Oh, that's not going to help on the rejoin. That was very sketchy, trying to bring that back around. And David H. Baker will see that Stephen Saunders is a very lucky lad.
Well, David Baker, I think, has got eyes as wide as saucers and now wide awake after that. I mean, you flat out, you're on the gas, you're really putting the power down. The last thing you expect is a car to rejoin at a 90-degree angle, not going and spinning around. I mean, this is the one thing about having the relatives. Keep an eye on it, see where you got a bit of room to try and turn the car around, or just reverse it back a little bit further. Do a 45-point turn to just avoid that sort of thing. It could have been very ugly for David Baker, who is currently 10th in the championship and looking to just try get into that 9th place position.
Fredriksson still in command after Kumlin makes his stop, and now almost half a minute clear, and Kumlin will come out in 4th place, and that is Sebastian Jackson pointing the wrong way.
Not an ideal time. Mistakes starting to creep in all over right here at Road Atlanta for round 9 of the Major Series European Division, and it is still gonna be a proper fight to the end. I mean, 20 minutes and 42 seconds doesn't sound like much, but in a race, it's the difference between January and April.
It is, and so when you're thinking about it, oh yeah, I can spare a minute, here it's a lifetime. And in comes Sebastian Jackson to make his stop. Laurens Verbeek still trying to work out where to go and gain the position against Jeff Schmeier, and I think what's making life very difficult is that Verbeek's doing about 1 minute 14s at the moment. His fastest lap, by the way, was a 13.7. By comparison, Jeff Schmeier's best lap was a 13.6. So they're now very evenly paced between each other.
Still a long race indeed, but now it's about keeping the lap times consistent, keeping yourself going. Jeff Schmeier been keeping it clean throughout the race. Now needs to focus on the championship, not only for his driver championship, but the team championship being rather crucial. The Dog Bear team been doing well, sitting in the top 10 for both their teams here in the European division, but they want to make it work out in their favor. Trevor Vorosky, by the end of this race, will be staring at 1st place in the European Championship ahead of Garin, and that is going to be keeping a smile on his face, but he cannot let it get to his head. Otherwise, mistakes are going to start to happen. As you see Brockner coming in, and this is going to allow Vorosky to get into 2nd and chase 9 seconds behind Verheyen.
We know that Verheyen is going to have to come in and make a stop. Brockner deciding to elect for it now to have some room to work with. And so as he looks around and sees where's Darren Sharples, he's gone through. Where's Jakub Krafek? He's gone through. Where is David H. Baker? He's just making his way through the final corner right now, and he'll just get the clearance needed. So Brockner, I think, has got himself a podium berth.
And going and smiling to the bank on that one, that's for certain, as drivers continue on fighting their way through. David Baker trying to keep the McLaren in check, the 33. Been keeping consistent in times, but now looks to hold 6th, possibly a top 5 on the board. Jeff Schmeier into the pits, right behind a fellow LMP2 of Laurens Verbeek, as those two were not leaving it to chance. They were going to stop right on the cones.
And critically, Verbeek got the track position to move on through, and it will be an earlier box for Verbate compared to Schmeier, as they've both gone through at the same time, and I believe, as the way that they've both gone about it, that will both be a drive-through penalty for incidents.
And that is unfortunately the wooden spoon that you didn't want to have, but seeing your rival get the same wooden spoon, it does tend to hope.
Håkan Schert has had a big moment with Colby Buck heading up to turn 3, and he has been sideswiped into the wall.
Oh no, not what you want to have, especially this late into the race. Colby Buck's car looking all okay, but you got to wonder if there's any suspension damage to the car, especially through the corners. You can clip the wheel and land up, losing a bit of time. And also, we'll have to fight your way through. Oscar Fredriksson still holds the lead. Lights starting to come ablaze here at Road Atlanta as the drivers trying to just watch the time tick over, hoping for any opportunity to gain one more position, or in Oscar Fredriksson's case, try and open up the gap to 30 seconds as he had before over Patulkas.
So as the lights start to come on here for all of these drivers, the twilight zone emerges here, and Oscar Fredriksson has been walking in a wonderland here over the course of this. He's got by all drivers and conquered all in front, and has been proving to have a bucket load of pace to go and work with. And look at the way he effortlessly makes the passes on the straight, and he will approach to Richard Cumlin, who will about to put a lap down to once again put just 3 cars on the lead lap.
Oscar Fredriksson now hoping to just get as much time as possible. Does not want to be caught into any unnecessary scuffles. You can see he bides his time before he makes the overtakes. Doesn't want to put any risk on the car. It takes one mistake, and as we've seen, one little sideswipe, one little foot wrong, a dive into the dirt can be detrimental to your race, as a number of retirees out of this race from GT3 all the way through to GTP.
Yeah, I would say that we are down to about 30, 35, 36 runners here in this race. So we've lost Gary Thomas, Brian Scrivener, Byron Kurtzer, Pedro Diaz, Jaco Grobler, Janeman Preuss, Devon Alies as well, and a non-start for Eric Scherer, who is there in trouble. So for Scherer, it's a case of everyone else will take my points. But for Oscar Fredriksson at the front, half a minute to the clear, and now starting to think about what you do to bring this home, and thinking, how much closer am I going to be in the championship after a result like this?
It's also, we've got to talk about the team championship, because the SRS team are going to be happy. The SimRace Sweden Esports are lying second in the championship, 4,263 points. They are behind Fusion Gold Euro on 4,319 points. So win here is crucial to jump up into first place in the team championship. They got Dogbear also trying to close him down on 4,260 points. So they're only 3 points ahead of Dogbear, and they will be considering that factor as well. So it's willing on the driver to dig deep, to keep going, not only for his championship, but for the team to walk away with stellar colors here at Road Atlanta, and on the right foot heading towards the end of the season.
Seba Cornes is maybe the only questionable factor of this top 3. The Uruguayan made an early stop at 51 minutes to go. The question still to be asked for the Obsidian Edge driver of, will I make it home and get this sorted? Michael Hafler-Darson, faultless at the front of the LMP2 division. One of the toughest cars to drive, because you got all that power and none of the, I would say, traction, or the ABS that's there to help you out. So you're trying desperately to stop this car that really just wants to run away for about 3 counties after this one here in Gainesville, Georgia.
This is going to be the main thing to keep an eye out for. Michael Hafler-Darson nearly 20 seconds ahead. Alex Crow has also got a little bit of time to catch up to Michael Crisp. There isn't really any time to be gained here in the Dallara LMP2 class, but the GT3s, take a look. Likes of Trevor Vorosky closed up, was 9 seconds. He's closed up to 8 seconds to Verwayen. and now looks to try and make it work. Steven Saunders on the climb as well, chasing down the Baby Metal team, and it's not going to be an easy time. We've seen Baby Metal strike back, whether it's chocolate or whether it's ratata. It's all the way the fight in the BMW.
Oh, I see you are a man of culture as well. Steven Saunders looking to try and find that way through, and a drive-through penalty for Colby Buck is thrown together on the boards by the stewards for avoidable contact with Håkan Schurt, and so because of that, Colby Buck might be staring down the barrel of a very confirmed 6th place.
Oh man, the Canadian is not going to be happy with that one and will be scratching his head of what could have been done different. Michael Hogg in 11th position, trying to do everything he can to hold his line on the outside. However, the McLaren clear under braking over the tried and true trusty BMW. It's one thing, the BMW hasn't got straight line, it hasn't got cornering, but it's a good all-rounder car for any beginner. But once you got a little bit of LMP2s and GTPs coming into the fray, you can see the difference in pace and how he gets thrown down the order as well. That error wash starts to happen, and he's going to be hoping to try and gain that little bit of time on Saunders in the McLaren, who seems to be rather busy at the moment.
Yeah, he does, and you're starting to look around and say, okay, we are losing time, so Michael Hogg can't do much. Saunders has been able to run away, but now it's okay. Just bring it home, I think, is the mood now that will be in the camp. 11 or 12 minutes left, and it's still getting busy with the likes of the side-by-side of Hafler, Darson and Van der Plat. And over the other side, Darren Sharples now in a bit of a moment here, because here's the question for him, stick or twist when it comes to a pit stop.
And also rejoining the fray, coming past there as Darren Sharples made his way through. We do see Jelleman Price rejoining the circuit after 50 minutes of damage. He didn't opt to do the fast repair on the car, but wants to see it through to the end. And he will be beating out his own teammate, Jaco Krobler, down at the bottom. So what was thought to be a retirement is now going to be a positive gain at the moment. See it through to the end. If you see the green, you got to see the checkered. That is the motto that many of us drivers tend to stick by and want to see through.
Jakob Krafek can't make it home and so has to take a pit stop. David H. Baker will jump that place and get that sorted. Vavroski then in 2nd position, looking at Stephen Verveyen thinking, you've got to come down in soon. You've got to be empty on your tank. You only went 55 minutes on the first stint. Don't tell me you can go an hour and 5 and get it all done. And he'll get his wish, because in comes Verveyen.
And this is going to be down to the wire, as Verveyen hoping that he had enough over Voroski. However, not going to be the case, and Voroski will be also smiling as this is going to be top points for him in the championship. And Casper Brockner getting a black flag. That is going to be a drive-through penalty. The ODC team not having an easy time out here, and Casper, who was fighting out in 4th, will serve the drive-through and drop him even further off the likes of Sharple.
Well, keep an eye on David H. Baker then, because that's the car that might be stealing that podium as far as it goes. Remember, Darren Sharples might need a stop as well late in this race, but Stephen Verveyen now will lead the pits, and will lead the pits in a very comfortable 3rd place. In comes Casper Brockner to get his drive-through sorted, and there comes David H. Baker. He'll take it away.
And it is now into the closing stages of the race. This is where you got to make it work, as we do see David Baker closing on the BMW just ahead. Hasn't got a rear. You can see the damage on the car now starting to play into effect. And David Baker, who is smiling, holding 4th and nearly having won the ODC. Big impact for the BMW, hard into the wall. That's going to need a tow back, and not what you want to have through the S's. Already a little bit loose with the damage on the rear, and that just cemented the fact that you've got a proper bit of a ding. Question is, does he have a fast repair to get back out on circuit, or is this the race done?
I think for Daniel Pais, that might be a day of saying, I'm going to have to put it back behind the wall. Michael Hafler-Darson, then 16, almost 17 seconds clear of Matthew Crisp, and walking towards another victory for him. And he needed that out there in terms of the day that he was walking towards, because he knows how critical the points are going to be. He's joined a little late in the season. He's only had 2 starts. He's got 400 points there or thereabouts to his name. But Alcantech, even though they're not doing anything this season, I think are going to wake up and say next season we're going to be huge challengers.
That's it. Many of the drivers that are doing this race will be considering the 2026 season coming up and waiting for the calendar announcement, also for the widely anticipated announcement of the MEC as well. So they are using this as a bit of practice for the official Petit Le Mans out on iRacing, but at the same time, a taste of what the Major Series Championship is all about and what you can land up fighting for in 2026.
Alex Crowe, who sits in 3rd position, will only be able to watch at this moment in time as far as where this race is going and has gone. And that is Oscar Fredriksson down in the pit and late. What has happened to Oscar Fredriksson? Has he not put enough fuel in his car? He's now going to be behind Aldis Paterkalis by a long way.
And that has just shot his entire chance of moving up in the championship, as Aldis Paterkalis, who's fighting in the top 10, will be scoring full points. What on earth happened to Oscar that he went so far? He's down into 3rd. I mean, this is a nightmare case from leading out the entirety of this race with no one challenging him. He is now into 3rd place and nearly 10 seconds off the likes of Seba Korns, and is now in for a fight to try and hold himself on the podium.
I'm astounded. I am absolutely astounded. And that one, I think you can only ask Oscar Fredriksson himself what happened there as he goes up the hill and is almost tagged from behind there by Richard Cumlin in the fight for the podium. That on and proving to be a very important battle now inside the final 6 minutes. Darren Sharples is still something to keep in mind in terms of whether he needs a little morsel of fuel or not. It looks like he's still okay for the moment at 6 minutes. Aldis Paterkalis is now being gifted a chance to really scrap for this title.
And now you've got Cumlin, who is going to be smiling ear to ear. He's tasted 3rd place. He's been there once before and now has an opportunity to go up against Fredriksson to try and take the top and fight for the championship. I mean, this is going to be great. Richard is going to have to throw everything. Caution to the wind, as you can see, a late dive onto the inside, trying to carry as much corner pace into turn 1, up towards turn 3, into turn, well, up through 2, into 3, coming down, and Oscar Fredriksson does not want to get held back at all, trying to slice his way through the GT3s as Richard tries to also get past back markers. This is a moment where you start to get giddy behind the steering wheel of, I can do this, I can get 3rd place. Oscar, make another mistake.
Well, he won't, because he's now starting to pull away. 1.4 seconds, that is a very slow car. That is 12th position overall in category, and I would say that is Michael Hogg. No, not Michael Hogg, sorry, but just in front of him, going very slow, and that would be, in fact, the likes of Alexander Lerkner finding troubles in the 400. So that one, again, proving its worth to be difficult. And remember, we're still wondering whether Seba Kornes has enough to make it home, because if Seba does from 53 minutes out, that's a great stint that he's been able to put together. But also, he's only 10 seconds back here of Oscar Fredriksson, so second still not out of the realms of possibility.
Oscar taking a very tight line through turn 1 around Cameron Bastos, a little bit of elbow rub there, saying, listen, you need to move, buddy. I'm in a chase here and I'm trying to make his way through. Seba is going to be holding a rag covered in fuel by the engine bay, going, listen, sniff on the fumes, try get to the end, anything at this point. Start changing the fuel lines all the way to sippy straws to try hold on to the second place. I mean, this is just taking the entire GTP race, flip the script, and for the next 3 minutes and 40 seconds, it is all out on the cards. Second, third, fourth place. No one has an idea of who's going to finish where. Likes of Aldis Paterkalis, who runs out in first, has played his cards right and now is looking to take the checkered flag. who is going to be smiling ear to ear. A driver that we didn't see taking the top spot has just done it on pure strategy.
And there is your leader in GT3, Trevor Vavrovsky, 26 seconds clear of Darren Sharples, and it's saying, right, this has been my day today. I will be talking the championship lead, and he will know that when all the points are scored. So there's a huge junk up down there at turn A, 10B. Jeff Schmeier and Sebastian Jackson are caught up in it.
And not what you want to have, as Trevor will see it coming through. And there is Jeff Schmeier pulling into the pits. Front suspension damage on the car. Sebastian Jackson trying to pull the Porsche to the pit lane and putting a lot of debris on the outside, where generally you're accelerating. And unfortunately, Sebastian's going to have to tow back to pits.
Yeah, that's going to be a real shame for him because he's driven a pretty decent race. Yeah, he's had a couple moments, but that was a huge one. His mistake, Sebastian Jackson. Schmeier, pretty much a bystander on that one. And Richard Cumlin realises that gap is just extending out a bit. But Oscar Fredriksson has to have slowed down for that incident, and that's why that gap comes down. Under 2 minutes to go here at the Road Atlanta circuit, the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Hafler Darson, maybe the only one who hasn't seen a single incident in front of him.
Well, we nearly put a bit of commentator's curse there as the wall got very, very close on the exit. He's trying to push that a little bit harder, maybe just lift off the gas. There's no reason to put it all on the line the way he is right now. But I think there's a little bit of pressure to prove that he is the quickest in the LMP2 class, as we do see both the leader of our GT3s and the leader of our LMP2s making their way through. Honestly, a beautiful shot, but Michael Hafler-Darson has to be cautious, getting a little too enthusiastic, and with 1 minute and 15 seconds left, anything can happen. We've seen so far 2 drivers have their race completely changed at the end of this, and now we may see more mistakes starting to creep in as everyone's tired, everyone's worn out, everyone's trying to push that a little bit more. And if you are close to position like Cumlin and Fredriksson, it is all about throwing caution to the wind to ensure you can get the last step on the GTP podium.
I look around at Darren Sharples and I say he's not safe against Stefan Verweyen. He knows he's got maybe 1, potentially 2 laps to go. Jeff Schmeier's in the wall again at 10A, 10B, and so his day is going to be written off. But Aldis Putekilis, though, will have 1 lap to go, and the chase very much on. It's still on for that podium in GTP, which you've got to keep an eye out on. But for the moment, it's Putekilis, who's done nothing wrong today. His pace hasn't maybe been perfect, but he has done the one thing that is required of him, have a completely sound strategy to go and work with, and it has shown out there. Vavrovsky is going to have himself a lap of honour, it feels like, at 32 seconds, because there will be very big concerns on Sharple's pace against Stefan Verweyen, which is at 2 seconds, and there's an off around him because Verbeek's had a tap and Daniel Holmer's had a tap off the road, heading on to the final lap. Putekilis has just about avoided all of that. Verweyen is not going to catch Darren Sharples now, and Sharples might be free. Corness on the final lap's got to come into the pits, so Fredriksson will take second. Corness was a lap short on fuel and has to have a splash and dash, because here comes Aldis Putekilis down the hill towards 10A and 10B. It might not have been the easiest race in the world, but here is one driver who knew how to deliver. Aldis Putekilis down through turn 12, wins at Road Atlanta.
And what a finish. Richard Cumlin will get third, Fredriksson will get second, and honestly, if it was 1 lap shorter, Seba would have been there. And what a gut punch towards at the end. But Michael Hafler-Darson celebrating down the back straight, in through the chicanes, will be coming across, taking the victory in the Dallara LMP2 class. It has been a race of note for him, 18 seconds ahead of Chris. And third place will go to Alex Crowe after a great stellar run.
Trevor Vavrovsky, a lap of honour for him. He wins quite comfortably in the end as Oscar Fredriksson sets the fastest lap just to put some good measure down in on the board. But Trevor, I think, will be very, very pleased that he'll walk into the championship lead and will do so with a sizable gap over the likes of Garen Batten, for example, who will be his nearest challenger. Your winner overall, it's 6, 6 and 6 there of Uldis Putekelis, the Latvian, getting everything done and what was needed to, as pretty much everybody has now crossed the line. So we will be able to bring for you the official classified results. There are some post-race reviews under play, so we'll say unofficial until those come in, between cars 101 and 87 out there overall, which is Sebastian Jackson and the 101 belonging to Håkan Schert. But it's a result here for Uldis Putekelis. They'll be very happy with 39 seconds, but it's all about Oscar Fredriksson and the pit stop of mystery that was there, as he had to come in a few laps from the end and maybe underfueled it by a fair amount, which is why Putekelis found himself where he was. Richard Cumlin will take the final spot on the podium as Seba Cornes had to pit on the last lap and ended up in 4th place. Michael Hesse will be 5th ahead of Colby Buck, as Roberto Di Filippis would be 7th, Sebastian Jackson in 8th, Fabio Braga in 9th, and Gary Thomas, your first of the retirees, then in 10th in class. Just Pedro Diaz on the end of that, also retiring from the race. You've got then your case of Stephen Koenig with LMP2.
The Dallara P2 on 7s, all smiles for Michael Hafler-Dawson taking the win. Matthew Crisp in 2nd place. Alex Crow will take 3rd ahead of Garen Batten, who takes some points home for his championship. Jaco van der Plaat ends out in 5th, along with 6th place Renner Resser going and chasing down. Oscar Morton in 7th, Wayne Hutchison in 8th, 9th is Lawrence Verbeek, and Chris Stolwich in that 10th place. 3 laps down on our lead car. Ray Partridge will end in 11th with Daniel Harmer. Jeff Schleimer, we saw with the incident right at the end. Brian Scrivener, early chaos for him. Brian Kutzer, also early retirement. Devin Ellis running into the fellow South Africans, loses out with 79 laps, and last is Eric Shire.
And then over to GT3, where Trevor Pavlovsky will now cement the championship lead, and by a pretty sizable margin. On top of that, Darren Sharples will finish 2nd, with David H. Baker a lap down as well in 3rd. Jakob Krafek will be 4th, as Stephen Vervian's contact going through on the final laps will drop him down to 5th. Cameron De Bastos will be 6th position ahead of Marcel Ridder and Stephen Saunders. Michael Hogg will take 9th ahead of Håkan Schert, who would round out your top 10. Noah Kelly and Alexander Lurkner would be 11th and 12th. Casper Bruckner would be day done just a few laps from the end, as too would be Daniel Pais, Janeman Preuss, and then Jaco Hrobler, then also running into a few particularities. So, as far as it goes, some wonderful races that have gone through. We're going to take the chance to talk to some of our drivers, and I think no better place to start than with Uldis Putekelis, who won overall category here today. Uldis, the only thing I can maybe ask of you is how important of a gift was that from Oscar Fredriksson? Because from our perspective, we didn't quite know what went on up here. So for you, picking up that victory by 40 seconds, I think you can say that's a bit of a gift.
It is, but you have to be there, to benefit from the luck sometimes, It's, of course, unfortunate for him. I heard it wasn't his fault. Somebody else took him out, but I'm happy about it. It's my first majors win, and especially today after completely rebuilt SimRig as well. I was expecting me to be slow, but yeah, it was awesome.
You walked into today 13th in the championship on 990 points. You take maximum points and you vault yourself up into the top 10 of the championship. In terms of how critical that is for you, the amount of work you put in, and of course having to rebuild your sim rig just before the start of this race, do you think this first race win of yours is absolutely worth it?
Oh, it's definitely worth it. It's been a long time coming, Sometimes I've been close, not to wins, maybe to podiums more, but yeah, this was a long time coming.
A long time coming for you, and so the next wait will be over to October 5th, and that Roval 400. How do you think that's going to change things about knowing that you're moving into a Roval with a little bit more differences out there in terms of how you're putting the car together in the NASCAR Next Gen?
Should be all right. I like both sides of the racing, oval and road. So that's something in the middle. Should be all right.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck as far as it goes. Uldis Petekalis there, picking up the victory overall. Your winner in LMP2 was Michael Haflidarsson. And Michael, in terms of that run in the Race Tech machinery, that was faultless.
Thank you. It's nice to hear on the track. I don't like that I'm doing a good job.
Well, you did a great job here today. You made sure you built that gap early on in the race. You had Matthew and Alex give you a little bit of, I would say, sustenance over the first hour. But what, for you, made that gap explode out in terms of having that gap go from 6 seconds to 18?
I think a bit of luck. Obviously, me and Crispy being teammates, we talked pre-race, and our plan was just to stay 1-2 or like not fight it out in the beginning. Just try to pull away, which we kind of managed. And then traffic kind of separated us a bit. And then I had those 8 seconds on Crispy. And then I think, I don't remember what I said exactly, but it was something with a lapped car or car lapping him that he lost a few seconds. So for me, it's just luck not being killed and just being good in traffic.
In terms of what you're looking at out of majors, you're not in a championship fight, you're stage hunting, you get your stage here today. And so is this all set up for next season, or what's the goal that you're looking at in terms of running majors?
No, this is definitely set up for next season. I mean, we did I can't remember what race it was, but the old Gen 4 car, the 600, that was the first race we did of the year. And then obviously done the Majors 24, where we finished P6 in top splits. I mean, we're getting our foot into Majors this year, and then next year it's we're planning to do other races and try to go for the championship itself.
Well, so in that case, we'll wish you the best of luck with next year and hope that you have as much success this year to get ready for it. Michael Haflidarsson there joining us and getting victory overall in LMP2. Oscar Fredriksson has managed to find his way to us. It's second overall. It was looking a little bit sketchy with about 10 minutes to go, Oscar. We didn't actually quite get to catch what happened with you, which caused you to make that extra pit stop. So walk us through what happened in your words.
Yeah, so coming out of the chicane, there was a GT3 on my outside who just lost it on the grass on the left and came right into my left side of my car. So wheel damage and had to cross into the pits to get repairs, and fortunately crossed too low, so missed the pit entry cone and had got a 40-second hold. So maybe I would have been able to keep the lead without that, but yeah.
I look at that gap, it's 39.5 seconds as you come to the line, so it would have been really close for the victory overall. You walked into today 9th in the championship. You had other teammates who weren't here, so a chance to build points. Has that been the story of your season, really? Missed opportunity?
Yeah, it's been a rough season for me, with a couple of bad performances and some missed races, so I was really looking forward to get a good one today. And it's still a good confidence booster to have this pace in this field. So still happy overall, even the result doesn't reflect that.
So you still take something away from you here today, and you look over towards the Roval race that comes along in October. Do you feel like that's going to give you a little bit more renewed confidence? You've got 3 rounds left, and you know that the pace was there because you were clear by half a minute today.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't done a lot of driving over the summer, so good to see. I still have some pace, but I think the Roval will be very difficult, especially with Jesper back. I know that's like one of his favorite tracks, and I'm not a huge fan. And this is one of my favorite tracks, so pace definitely came from that. So probably won't expect the same level of dominance at the Roval, but still looking forward to that, and we'll finish on a good note from this race.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck next time out. Oscar Fredriksson, a second place finish. That could have been first, it could have been fourth, believe it or not, from the end of all that. Final driver we'll get a chance to chat with, third overall in LMP2, Alex Crowe. Alex, I think the first thing we have to say, very tight incident count here today at 20, made life very difficult, and you, one of the drivers who fell afoul of it.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tight incident limit. It wasn't the cleanest race on my part. A few off tracks, a couple 4Xs on top of that. I was close to a second drive-through as well. I was at 27 out of 30 there. Yeah, good pace over the day. Still glad with where I finished. I think with or without that drive-through, I was going to be finishing third anyway.
So you were close on a couple of occasions coming out of the pits to Matthew Crisp. You were certainly giving him a race, but what was making the big differences then between that difference in the fight for second?
Definitely traffic. That was huge, especially the first time through GT3s. I think I lost extra 3 or 4 seconds on Crisp, just one lap through traffic. They couldn't really make it back up, and then I'd come out close on cold tires just because I pit a lap later. But then I was on much colder tires than he was, and he was able to pull those a couple seconds back. Other than that, yeah, just luck of traffic. It's not that long of a race, so it can kind of swing depending.
And so for you, you got 3 rounds left at the end of the season. What are you looking forward to in terms of the next challenges that the Majors throws up?
In terms of the regular Major Series, I don't think I'll be running any more of it, but this is obviously great prep for the 24 hours-ish coming up in 2 weeks here, as well as the iRacing Petit Le Mans coming up a few weeks after that. That's really what I was using for, just getting up early setup dialed, seeing what I can work on, and getting used to Road Atlanta.
That's what we call a fair use of your time. Alex Crowe there joining us, stage hunting and picking up a 3rd place overall then for the efforts that were put through. Stephen, final thoughts as we look to bring the curtain down here at Road Atlanta.
Honestly, round 9 has really put the cat amongst the pigeons for the championship. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all goes. And we're heading towards a oval, but we've also got to consider the Bathurst 500 that's coming through, that many of the drivers are starting to build up. We've got stage hunters, but we've got many of those stage hunters baring their teeth for 2026. I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season goes and who is going to be able to take the top spot in the championship for the European division of the Major Series. It's going to be lightning. It's going to be great. And you've got to keep your eyes on the race. You've got to keep your eyes on the channel and the series. And welcome all to come and race with us here at the Major Series. And if you haven't got a setup, the Majors Garage has got a setup for you. There's no reason not to participate.
The only place you can catch it here in terms of European action is with us at the Global Sim Racing channel. I'd like to thank the team who's brought this over to you here today. From Stephen Koenig, from the likes of Nico Hillebrand, who is here filling in the early stages, from the likes of Daniel Costello, who has been in the director's chair, and then Dougie Beard on cameras. My name is Jake Sperry. There is still some amazing racing that is coming up, and of course that next round of the championship, which will be coming into fruition. But of course you've got the Porsche's Owners Club on the 9th of September, and then it's a quiet week for us because week 13's iRacing build is going to come into play. Silverstone is on the horizon for Grand Prix Legends, and then you've got IMSA Vintage coming along to start the season at Sebring, and we don't quite know yet where Classic Lotus Grand Prix is going to be taking off from, but we will soon see how that goes. October 5th is the next battleground, and it will be at Charlotte Motor Speedway on the Roval for the next action of that Roval 400. You can catch this 2:45 UTC, 9:45 Eastern on the 5th of October as part of a Genesis Extreme production here with the Global Sim Racing channel. But sometimes stories write themselves. An opportunity that was taken away just 10 minutes away from time. It was easy for Hafler Darson. It was easy for Vavrovsky. It's a miracle sometimes that has to be written. Enjoy your first win and enjoy it with as much pride as you can. Aldis Petekalis joins the names of the greats, and he will now be a winner in the Major Series.
This is iRacing.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.